Oh, oh dear. Right. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Before we get started, obviously the general housekeeping. Newer subscribers, just notice that you have to be subscribed for 20 minutes before you can leave any messages. This is obviously designed to keep the time wasters, the spammers, and the annoying trolls off the chat. It makes life a little bit easier for my moderators and myself. It makes it easier to keep the chat flowing, and people can just post their questions, and it means I can keep on top of it, and the moderators can keep on top of it. Now, I know we've had some more recent subscribers, some new subscribers in recent days and weeks. Not everyone has necessarily participated in a live stream before, so feel free to get your questions in. It's not all sports questions. We do occasionally have the general Hangout questions as well, and just random general knowledge stuff and non-sports stuff as well. I was planning today to go down to the New Forest, which, if you're not from the UK, is in the central south of England, basically, from the coast up through Hampshire and Wiltshire. But the weather, unfortunately, has been a bit dreadful. It was sunny when I woke up this morning here, but further south and west, it was chucking it down on the south coast on the edge of the New Forest, and I haven't been particularly well for the last month or so. I'm still getting over another chest infection, so this damp weather's going to do me no good. So I've decided not to go down the New Forest today, which is a shame because I was planning to go down to the edge of the New Forest and the south coast today for a little bit of an escape from the humdrum that is the apartment, is the flat, but it is what it is. Now, we've covered a lot of topics on live streams. I've got to have a look and see how many live streams I've actually done over the last 6 or so years. There's been so many. I started doing live streams on the channel just over 6 years ago. We have had so many live streams. Some of them have gone on for many hours. We're talking, I think the longest live stream we've done is pushing 6.5 hours, which is a bit mental. So I do have a bottle of drink to keep the voice going because my voice is still a bit croaky. And yeah, not every question has to be sport related. I do try and keep the politics side of things off this channel and onto the history boffin channel, but occasionally sport and politics, as we've seen over the last couple of years especially, have sort of collided somewhat, and it makes it difficult to distinguish between the sport and the politics. But there's some interesting things that have come out. So the IOC have now said that they're going to give prize money for medalists in the Olympics. They're going to start with the gold medalists in this Olympics, and then later Olympics in 2 and 4 years' time, be it the Winter Olympics or the Summer Olympics, more sports. At the moment, it's just track and field, but more sports are going to have that prize money element added. And then silver and bronze medalists will also earn prize money for their finishes. If you're in the relay team in the track and field, be it 100, 4x100 or 4x400, you split I think it's $50,000 prize money that the IOC and the IAAF, International Athletics Federation, have decided to put aside as prize money. So that's a first for the Olympics. There's prize money involved now for medalists. So that's the first bit of news. I'm not sure how to really break that down. It's only been announced today that this is what they're going to do. It's an interesting development because obviously back in the day when the Olympics was set up, way back when, I believe in 1896, when the modern Olympic movement, you had to be completely amateur. And so we've had some discussions about, football and ice hockey being professional and rugby union being professional sports that compete at the Olympics now that were amateur back in the day. So there's been that discussion with the NHL, with the Winter Olympics, the IOC and the IIHF about NHL player participation over the years, which has been a hot topic between the NHL and the NHLPA when it comes to collective bargaining agreements, and of course discussions with the IOC over player payments and player healthcare and insurance for injuries, and also how it disrupts the regular league season in the NHL. big news coming out the South Sydney Rabbitohs that we covered. It looks very likely that Jason Demetrio will not keep his job, regardless of the result against the Cronulla Sharks later this week. It looks likely his job's done. He's gone. Although at the moment he is still the head coach until any other news breaks. Jason Demetrio is still going to be the South Sydney Rabbitohs head coach as things stand, although it's looking very, very likely he is going to be replaced. And now the front runner, according to leaks coming out of the South Sydney Rabbitohs, is Mal Meninga. And that's already created a lot of discussion on social media. We covered that in a brief video. The Australian media is going completely insane, and social media has also gone a little bit mad over the fact that Mal Meninga is linked with a return to club coaching. He hasn't coached at club level for a very long time. The last club he coached was the Canberra Raiders and had a mixed bag. Yes, they made finals in a few of those seasons, but he wasn't there very long and didn't really set the world on fire as a head coach at club level. In saying that, obviously Queensland and Australia, I mean, he's had great success, but then again, the teams pretty much select themselves, and he has the best option of the best players available for both state and country, rather than at South Sydney, where players are not performing particularly well, and the team is a complete and utter basket case at the moment, with more leaks than a sieve, a divided dressing room, and clearly a coach that's a dead man walking in the coaching sense. So that is a big story that has been breaking. And we'll keep an eye on the news headlines over the next few days, because they do play the Cronulla Sharks in round 6. And, there were reports saying they've got to win this game. But then they got the bye round. And then they got the Storm and the Panthers. So it doesn't get any easier. In fact, I think it gets harder, although the Cronulla Sharks are looking pretty good this season as well. So whether Demetrio keeps his job or not, Meninga coming in, or another coach coming in on an interim or a permanent basis, it's going to be a disaster of a season. There's a lot of issues surrounding Latrell Mitchell and his playing future, whether he will stay at South Sydney or whether, time's up. There have been meetings held. He is currently suspended for 3 weeks. We've covered that in other videos and on other live streams, but he's currently suspended for the elbow to Sean Johnson in the defeat against the Warriors. I've done a video covering basically their defensive frailties and their poor start to the season, with only the one win in 5 games, and their record at the end of last season was pretty diabolical as well. So this has been a situation brewing for quite some time. We have to also look at their recruitment and player retention policies, who they've let go, who they've signed, and their player development. So we'll see how this plays out, but it's looking very likely at this point in time that Jason Demetrio could potentially have already coached his last game. We don't know if he's actually going to be the head coach in the box come the game against the Sharks in round 6, or is this going to be his last game? We'll see what happens. We'll see if he walks away. We'll see if they sack him. There's various permutations, but it's becoming very messy now at South Sydney, and the fans have got too used to being a decent side, basically. The fan base has become far too expectant. I think every team has to go through a down period and struggle and rebuild at times. There are issues with how the roster is constructed, and obviously there are some key players out injured as well. And they have a lot of issues with a lot of big egos in that dressing room, and it's a very divided dressing room. So it seems from the outside looking in, just as a general observer and a fan of professional sport. We've seen this before in other sports, in other leagues, and also in rugby league as well. That is not a happy dressing room. I think Jason Demetrio lost the team quite some time ago. I think the players have checked out. They're dividing into separate groups within that dressing room. There seems to be a lot of separate playing factions within the dressing room. And that big question around Cody Walker and Latrell Mitchell and the standards they are held to compared to the rest of the playing group, I think has caused further division within an already divided dressing room. So we shall see what plays out at South Sydney in the coming days. The club history series that I've resumed, where I've been looking at a lot of European clubs, predominantly in Switzerland, has been really eye-opening, really fun to do. I've actually had a quick look at the all-time list for league titles, and there's a lot of clubs that have won league titles in Switzerland. Some of them don't even exist anymore, mind. 2 of them have merged together to form another club, which has had continued success following a merger. So we'll do a video on Neuchâtel Xamax tomorrow. Just a little backstory: 2 clubs in Neuchâtel merged together. One of them had already won the league title and had success previously. They've merged together, and since the merger, they've won more silverware. So that's going to be an interesting, different history video, but still a very interesting one nonetheless. But no, the Football Club History series, I did start obviously this batch of club histories with Rotherham because obviously they were relegated from the Championship in England, and it was one of the few English clubs in the top 6 divisions I had. I hadn't done all the non-league, like National League, North and South, and National League clubs, but it is one of those interesting ones where they're their first club in the English league system in the top 4 leagues to be confirmed as relegated. So I started there, and then we opened Pandora's box and went into the Swiss league. Some of the clubs in the Swiss videos that I've done on top flight clubs at the moment, which is very, very interesting. But all of them have won silverware, so it just shows the depth in Swiss football that I think gets overlooked because it's a lesser known league and some of the clubs aren't well known to a lot of football fans. Obviously, I've done some Scandinavian clubs as well, and I'm going to continue to do more European clubs. And some of them have some great histories and some fantastic names as well. I mean, BSC Young Boys of Bern playing at the Wankdorf Stadium, you couldn't get a bit more tongue-in-cheek if you tried. I mean, they're the dominant club in Switzerland right now. They've got a great history, but that name and then the stadium name is just, you can just see the chants at matches, especially when they're playing Europe against English-speaking opposition from England or Scotland. You can just see the tongue-in-cheek banter between the fan bases. That's something I think we're quite good at as European sports fans, is taking the piss out of each other. And then there's the hooligan ultra element to European sports fans as well. But the US just doesn't quite get the concept. I think they're learning about the concept, and I do have a lot of American viewers. I do have a lot of Australian viewers as well. They're starting as more and more videos and clips are posted on social media, and as the TV deals become more international, they are starting to pick up on a lot of the European sporting culture, which is very similar to the Australian sporting culture, but also has its differences. The US sporting culture is just completely different, and promotion and relegation seems very alien to a lot of North Americans, but they are slightly picking up our sporting culture, the history of our sports teams and the community aspect and the foundation aspect for some of these teams. I mean, FC Aral, for example, being founded by workers in a local brewery, you couldn't get more working class than that, to be honest. And beer and sports go hand in hand. Well, Major League Baseball, to make it more entertaining, Major League Baseball's having a lot of issues. Something else I want to cover, I did watch Brody Brazil is a brilliant sportscaster for NBC over in California. He has his own YouTube channel, and he was covering Major League Baseball in regards to the fiasco that is the Fanatics deal, where Fanatics, under the instruction from Nike, have been told to redesign the jerseys and the playing kit, basically, and the training kit. It's been a disaster. Fanatics does a lot of manufacture of sports jerseys and kits under license with a lot of companies, not just Nike or Nike, depending on how you pronounce it. A lot of leagues and teams like Puma, Nike, Adidas or Adidas, Umbro, all the major manufacturers, occasionally, to increase their manufacturing capacity, they will subcontract the work out to companies like Fanatics. It's been a disaster. There's been more issues. Players have really kicked off now about the quality of the kit they're wearing, and they're not very happy with the equipment, basically. It's been an ongoing issue since pre-season training. It's now, we're in the regular season now, and it's continuing to be a really big issue with apparently the material is just absorbing moisture. It's not allowing the breathability that Fanatics and Nike claim, and you can severely see the sweat patches and the moisture just being retained, and it's just apparently it's not comfortable to wear. You faced fast pitch and fast bowling in cricket. Baseball much harder. Faced American teenager pitcher who did a proper overarm pitch. He's never saw it. There's different techniques, and there's been an uptick in injuries. They've sped up the pitch clock. A lot of sports are trying to make their sports quicker, bringing in new rules and new regulations surrounding speeding up the game. We've seen it in rugby league. We've seen it in the NFL. We've seen it in cricket as well. And now we're seeing it in baseball with the pitch clock. And there's been an uptick in elbow and forearm and upper arm injuries with pitchers. because they're being rushed with the pitching clock. The last year alone was 3 times higher the previous 20 years. So the previous 20 years, where they've got stats from, I think, 96 to 2022, something like that. In a time frame period, I can't remember if it was 96 to 99, but there was a time frame period where they looked at the amount of arm, elbow, and shoulder injuries that pitchers sustained. It was about 11,000 something, 11,600 in a 5-year period for playing days lost. Last year alone, we're talking 34,000 playing days lost through injury. So in 1 year, with the pitch clock being in place, injuries have gone up by 3 times, maybe 4 times the number that pre-pitch clock era, depending on which era in the 90s and 2000s and 2010s and into the 2020s we are looking at. Since they brought the pitch clock in, injuries have gone up. So yes, it might have sped the game up and therefore can be more attractive to new fans and casual fans to get into the game. But the side effect and another consequence is the uptick in injuries in regards to the pitches. So there's pros and cons to bringing in rule changes. So that's another thing that's been a big discussion point in Major League Baseball is the uptick in injuries. Already, the numbers this season so far for injuries are already at a rate that it was higher than last year. So if they go at current rate, they're going to have over 33,000 playing days lost to injury with just pitchers. We're not looking at batters or fielders. We're just looking at the pitcher. So that is quite concerning at the rate they're already on. We're only a week or two into the season. If the rate continues as it currently is, it's going to be higher than last year. So there are issues surrounding the pitch clock timing, and they've made some tweaks to it to make it even faster, so that we are seeing more injuries so far. But that's an unintended consequence, maybe changes in training technique and training loads, potentially rotating more pitches. We could see a lot of teams having depth issues where they're going through pitches like they're on their 5th or 6th string starting pitcher, for example. So that's going to be very, very interesting to see how that plays out. I'm not a massive baseball fan myself, but I have watched the occasional game. I will be watching the London series of games again this season for channel purposes, which is going to be interesting, and to see how that pitch clock actually works. I wasn't actually paying attention last year to the pitch clock, if I'm being honest. So there is that. Sacramento Republic having a good start to their championship. 1-3, drawn 2. Oh yeah, one of my moderators, Dan, it works for Sacramento Republic in California. He's been a long time subscriber to the channel. He is a moderator. Because of his work commitments, he doesn't pop up on Livestream or in the comments as much as he used to, but he's a long time subscriber, and he's a former baseball player in the NCAA. And again, an elbow injury, that was him done, and he's going to require surgery at some point to basically fix a very bad elbow injury. And again, he was a pitcher. So I don't know if they were experimenting with the pitch clock in collegiate baseball or minor league baseball before bringing it to Major League Baseball level. But it is definitely something that Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association definitely need to keep an eye on. It's clearly an issue, and player welfare in whatever sport we're talking about needs to be a priority. And we're seeing a lot of discussions surrounding player welfare in recent years. So that is something to keep an eye on. Not the biggest story in the world, but the Fanatics fallout in Major League Baseball. I'm concerned as an NHL fan what next season's jerseys and the jerseys for the next 10 years are going to look like. So I'm quite concerned about the future of the product that we as sports fans, if you are an NHL fan, what our jerseys are going to look like in the next 10 years. I don't know what down... I occasionally I video call him, and we have chats when possible. He was explaining his injury to me. He basically tore his tricep, and I think did some of his ligaments in. Very, very similar to like an ACL or an MCL, PCL in your knee. Did something very, very similar in his pitching arm, and that is a very common injury for pitchers, is elbow and upper and lower arm injuries, and even wrist injuries, because of the forces that are going through their body at the time. It's the same with bowlers in cricket, especially fast bowlers. A lot of contact injuries and joint injuries in their bowling arm and in their front foot, planting their front foot when they're bowling. There's a lot of injuries there. And again, they're trying to speed up cricket with the over rate and punishments in place for that. So a lot of sports are trying to speed up the game, make it more entertaining. And so that's just something that, as fans, we just don't realise that a slight tweak to the rules and slightly speeding up the game can have unintended negative consequences, which in this case is a higher risk of injury. Also, side strains are another big thing that are not getting covered as much, but side strains with all your muscles down here when you are pitching, depending how you bowl or pitch, and the force is going through your dominant arm or your bowling or pitching arm, you're going to get side strains from like your hip, and even your groin can go all the way up the side of your body that is your dominant pitching or bowling arm. Some players can pitch with both hands, some players can bowl with both arms. So you can have some very, very versatile pitchers and bowlers in both baseball and cricket, but there is an unintended consequence with altering the rules and tweaking them. But yeah, Dan Hobbs is his name. He's a regular viewer. He is a subscriber. He is a moderator. Because of his work commitments with Sacramento Republic, he's less visible on the channel now. But I do message him quite regularly, and occasionally we have video calls where we talk and all that. Yes, the Masters. I think the weather's going to impact the Masters. There's a lot of thunderstorms in the southeast of the US, high chance of tornadoes and hail, and potential flash flooding. So we could see a very weather impacted Masters this year. We've seen it before. I think last year and the year before there was some trees that fell and some lightning strikes. The Masters could be heavily disrupted with the weather. So there are some weather warnings in place across the southeastern United States. Currently, I think the bad weather's over Texas, but it's moving eastwards. There's a lot of bad weather coming off the Gulf of Mexico, high humidity reaching cold air off the Great Plains, and it's meeting right slap bang over Texas and moving over Georgia and Alabama, Louisiana, and it's drifting east northeastwards. There's a few weather and other channels that I follow that keep on top of volcanoes, earthquakes, and the weather. One of them, the Earthmaster, he covers everything from the auroras in the sky, so the space weather, so solar flares, to earthquakes, to volcanoes, to the actual weather. He is based in the US, so he's a bit more US-centric when it comes to the weather reporting. But where the Masters is being held, there is going to be some weather disruption over the next 3-4 days. It's going to be interesting to see how the players adapt to changeable conditions and what the organisers do should the weather get really bad. And we're talking hailstones the size of golf balls, if not bigger, coming out the sky, thunderstorms, potential for tornadoes and flash flooding. So it's going to be a tasty Masters. I have no doubt that the Masters is going to be quite tasty this year with the weather, which the player who adapts to the conditions the best is, I think, going to win. But it's, in my opinion, the Masters is the greatest golf competition in the world. I know golf has been beset by the PGA versus the LIV battle. We've seen it in other sports. There's been a lot of litigation. There's been a lot of bad press. It's not a good look for golf. Basically, it just shows how greedy golfers can be, and the sports administrators and golf's at a crossroads right now. I think they need to find a permanent, amicable solution on both sides, but we'll see what happens. Snooker, I'm not a massive fan of snooker these days. I've gone off snooker in recent years. I've just fallen out of love with the sport. I used to be a member of a snooker and pool club back in the day. I used to play quite regularly, both snooker and pool, but I just don't enjoy it as much as I used to when I was about 10, 15 years ago when I was in my 20s. Now I'm in my mid-30s. I just don't enjoy it as much anymore. It does cost a lot of money to, even if you're just a guest and you're going on a guest pass or whatever, and you're just going down a snooker hall or a pool hall, it does cost money. A good snooker cue is not cheap. You can buy some cheap ones in some sports stores, but they're not going to last very long. You want to get a proper one made to measure, like decent height, that you're comfortable playing with all the extensions. And as I say, it's just a sport that I thought, there's a lot of sports I've fallen out of love with, and I have my views on where snooker's heading, and some of the issues that have impacted snooker in recent years. There's been a lot of match fixing allegations. A lot of them have been proven. There's been a lot of bans for match and spot fixing. There's been a lot of players under suspicion of it. And there's snooker's got a lot of problems with corruption at the moment, which is another thing that I just puts me off the sport. Sadly, I mean it's a great sport. It's a good sport where you can just be a member of a snooker club and play with your mates and have a couple of friendly frames against each other. There's a good community around snooker. The fans are very, very knowledgeable. There's a lot of great players out there. The talent depth is deeper than it's ever been, but unfortunately, at the same time, with more players turning professional, the sport getting bigger, there's a lot more money, and there's more chances for bad things to happen when you've got a lot more money suddenly in the sport that wasn't there 10, 20, 30 years ago. So sadly, a lot of corruption allegations. Some of them have been found to be proven true. A lot of players serving lengthy bans from the sport right now. Some of them will never play again. The last decade has been tough on the sport in regards to the amount of corruption allegations, match fixing allegations, and bans for said allegations that have been proven true. So it's one of those sports that has a corruption problem. Unfortunately, it taints the sport. There's a lot of players who play fairly, don't take bribes, aren't fixing matches or fixing frames, that kind of thing. Got great integrity, play, I wouldn't say clean is not the right word, but they play the game with integrity and for respect for the opponent. And then there's others. It's good to hear that Torquay United have found a preferred bidder, and hopefully a solution can be found, and hopefully in the not too distant future they're back in the Football League and have some stability. Football's going through some very concerning times as a sport, which is another reason why I did the football club history videos. There's looking through the Swiss list of champions, several clubs that have won the Swiss title don't exist anymore, and a couple of the clubs that I've done videos on have basically gone bankrupt and survived right at the final minute with hours going before ceasing to exist. So it's good to see that Torquay, I think, have found a way out of their difficult situation. They're a regional club, they're a smaller club, but the loyal fan base that have played in the Football League, and it's never nice seeing clubs, go out of business or struggle. We've obviously lost Nuneaton Borough this season. Obviously, there's ongoing issues with Reading at the moment, and Reading's one of my local clubs, and I work with a lot of Reading fans, and I even do the bins of some of the Reading players with my day job, where they live. So, it's definitely impacting the community where I live. Reading's training ground, which is now owned by Wycombe Wanderers, is literally a stone's throw from my flat. It's not that far away, and it is, it's really sad when a local club that has good links with the local community in which they represent is going through a real tough time. And it's not good, but a lot of questions have to be asked of the FA as the main governing body, and then the Premier League and the Football League, and then National League, and all the way down through the system of each league's governing body, and of questions about ownership and who should really ultimately be a club owner. Now, there's a lot of clubs across Europe that actually have a lot of fan ownership models, or fans being part owners. Covered that with a couple of the Swiss clubs where they've had fan involvement as part of the ownership group to keep the clubs going. So there's that. Mr. Neptunian, you always have seen an obscure sport or two that you've given a go. Enlighten us with some of the more obscure sports, because some of the sports you've had a go at are really odd. But Berry, the 3-4G pitch, the initial cost is the expense, and then it's easier to maintain as a non-league club, keeps the running costs down. And when you're tight for cash, and we know what happened to Bury, obviously, with their collapse and rebirth and all the issues surrounding that and that historical club. Again, a lot of blame has to lie with the Football League and allowing various bad owners to own that club and asset strip it and make a complete mess of the whole situation. But there's several clubs that have been in very situation are currently in that same situation where they are struggling to pay players on time. Reading being one of them, they've been late on player payments multiple times. So there are significant issues within the sport, not only in England but across the board. And if you look at my football club history series and you look at the amount of clubs that I've done videos on over the years that have had administration and or the previous club goes bust and it's a reformation club, there's loads of them. And there will be more, obviously, as I go across Europe and do videos on clubs across Europe. So there's that. But I'm not surprised that Bury are putting in the hybrid plastic pitch. Not that I'm a fan of them, but it does reduce the running costs for the club and make it more financially viable in the short to medium term as they battle to get back to the Football League when they can put a grass pitch back in because they've got more revenue streams coming in and therefore more money. It's a lot of non-league clubs are doing it to save money. And also means when look at Truro City with their fixture list to end the season, a lot of games have been lost to the weather. I mean, it's trying to rain right now. It's rained most of the afternoon where I live. There's a lot of bad weather around. We've had so much rain here across the UK since the end of last July. We've had only a handful of weeks where it's not rained over the last 8-9 months. We had a brief warm spell over the end of August, beginning of September for a couple of weeks. We had a couple of cold, dry spells with a hint of a bit of snow both before and after Christmas. But for the most part, it has rained and rained and rained and rained, and it's raining again now. I mean, the chances of the weather getting better over the next few days are there. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we have a dry end to the week, second half of the week. But the weather has been absolutely diabolical. And having a pitch like that means the weather has less of a chance to basically force a postponement of a match. So it's all again, maximising as much money as possible whilst reducing the running costs of the club in the short to medium term as they battle their way back to the Football League. Tamworth FC won the National League North on Saturday, back in the 5th tier. Again, so we're now starting to see the relegation and promotion aspect. Obviously, Rotherham relegated last weekend. Tamworth now officially promoted. We are starting to see that this is the tail end of the season. This is the business end of the season. And again, this is where this is no offense to North Americans, but their sporting culture is completely different. And as more and more sports fans from North America watch our sports and understand our sports and the history behind our sports, especially association football, they will obviously call it soccer, which is infuriating, but we have to, grin and bear it. They understand the structures and how the system works, and as more and more of them, access the sport through TV and the internet, and watch games, and follow, the leagues. They just understand that our sporting culture is different, and they actually like the fact that our sporting culture has a promotion relegation system. So there is that. You're not sure what to make of Salford and Wrexham. Well, Wrexham historically were a Football League club. They're the oldest club in Wales. They've just gone through some tough times in the last decade and a half or so. Very similar to Leeds United when Leeds United were first relegated out of the Premier League and took a long time to get back the first time round. Why Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney chose Wrexham, I would have to do a bit of digging on that, but they've done their ownership the right way. I like the fact they are investing in the community by redeveloping the stadium and bringing the stadium back up to FIFA and UEFA international standards, because Wales have had international matches played at the Racecourse Ground in Wrexham. And they have a very, very big fan base, both in England and Wales. Very, very big fan base regionally. They're the only professional club in that part of Wales. Their nearest rivals are Shrewsbury across over in England. So they have a big catchment area for fans. A lot of great players have played for Wrexham. Salford is a bit different in regards to the ownership and the fact that they play in a very congested sports market. and they do struggle to sell out their stadium because of the distance to Manchester United and Man City being so close by. Bolton not being that far away in Greater Manchester, Oldham Athletic historically being in a higher level than them as well. So they find it harder to grow their brand, and the Class of 92 who own the club, or members of the Class of 92 who own the club, there's been some criticism thrown their way in regards to how they've gone about, getting that club up into the Football League. So there is that. Scunthorpe United have run out of money. They've had a lot of money problems over recent years. And it is notoriously difficult. It's not as easy to bounce back from a relegation, especially when Scunthorpe have had multiple relegations. They've been very badly run off the field, a lot of money issues, and it's very, very hard to bounce back when you have instability off the field. If you have very stable ownership, it can be really easily done if you've got the right structures in place. But when you've got unstable ownership, money issues, and the form has not been great for a very, very long time, it's a lot harder to stabilise and go back up. Hopefully, they, again, get back to the Football League sooner rather than later. But there you go. Yeah, Ian Botham is a fan. I think he actually played for Scunthorpe as well at one point. He did play a couple of seasons at Scunthorpe. He's a multi-sportsman. Didn't have a very long football career. Obviously, he played more cricket, but he did play a little while at Scunthorpe. Scunthorpe, I mean, they are a decent-sized club with a decent-sized fan base in a very deprived area. So that's a big thing for the community. It's the heart and soul of the community, I think, Scunthorpe. There are a few Scunthorpe fans who subscribe to the channel. I know that. My Scunthorpe videos that I've done tend to do rather well. And there is, as I say, a sizable number of Scunthorpe fans who are subscribers. There are certain clubs that I've done videos on and who subscribe, have good subscriber numbers to the channel. And I've noticed my football club history videos since I've started doing them this week. The viewership figures have been quite good. I don't expect them to be blowing things out the water, but they are doing quite well for the club history videos, considering that only one of them is an English club and the rest are Swiss and Scandinavian that I've done this week. The viewership figures have been pretty decent. I'm not going to lie. There's only a couple that are not really getting views, but they are doing quite well, and the people are commenting and liking them. So while they're not designed necessarily to get thousands and thousands of views, they are fun to do. They're great to do when I've got a lot of time off work. And because I've posted so many today, that means there's a lot of new content for a lot of people to go, I'll watch that one, then I'll watch that one. And there are some viewers that solely watch the channel for the club history videos. And one thing that really spurred me on to continue to do the club history series is my friend who passed away a couple of years ago, when he was in the last few months of his life, when he was having his cancer treatment, and he was very, very ill. He kept watching. He just made a playlist. So every time I did a club history video, he would add it to the playlist, and he would just watch them through while he was going through his treatment. He would just watch them through on a constant loop. And it was really weird seeing some of the club history videos I did the season before or in years past, or some of the older ones were getting a lot of views. And I'm like, what's going on here? And at his funeral, his partner was like, yeah, no, he kept putting your videos on constant loop. And I was like, he's screwing with the algorithm. I thought, you cheeky sod, you know what you're doing. But so that kind of inspired me to continue doing them. But yesterday, Premier Racing, who do the junior ladder like F2, F3, and F4, announced they're going to go racing IndyCar in the US as part of a two-car operation in 2025. It's interesting that a team that's involved in the F1 structure is branching over to IndyCar. I'm not surprised with the fact that because Liberty Media are the controlling stakeholder of F1 now, and with the amount of US races we're getting year on year, which I think it's gone to overkill at this point, and a lot of the drivers aren't overly keen on all the US races. There's been a lot of feedback from drivers going, this is not F1. I'm not surprised that a team involved in the lower ladders of Formula One with the feeder series are deciding to give IndyCar a go. And I'm not surprised because of that Liberty Media involvement. They've also got now involved in MotoGP going forward. So it's going to be interesting to see if there are any changes to MotoGP and its Moto2 and Moto3 structure. And if any of the MotoGP or Moto2 or Moto3 teams decide to look across the Atlantic to North America and sign up for the AMA Superbikes and the American Superbike Series and their support classes and put some bikes on the grid. If Prema are doing this, Prema are also involved in World Endurance Championship, European Endurance Le Mans, and IMSA as well. They've got cars on the grid, or they've had cars on the grid. Oh no, not Bev, not Bevy. No. I mean, yeah, it's I mean, Peter Brock, legend of supercars, and when you have these very, very legendary figures in sport, you get to know their families because they become kind of cult figures as well. I think Aussie motorsport fans are going to be more impacted by that than someone from outside Australia who just loves the sport. But you get to know, as a fan, you get to know the figures around the sport, even if it's family members of the participants or, you know, even commentators, sponsors, team owners. It doesn't matter what their involvement is, be it as a famous supporter or a family member of someone participating. But that is, I wouldn't say it's useless trivia. I wouldn't be surprised if the supercars paddock actually does something for his wife, like in some kind of tribute. Yeah, I mean that is quite sad to hear. Because there'll be those, especially in the Australian media and in the Australian fandom of the supercars and other forms of motorsport, who would have come across both himself and his wife, and so you'll hear a lot of stories and a lot of interviews and podcasts where they'll talk about, oh yeah, we had a meeting, we'll suddenly see a lot of podcasts and interviews given where they discuss, whereas the Aussies, like you guys like to call it, a good yarn. Discussing some of the fun stories from back in the day. Well, ART, GP, DMS, Dams, Trident. I don't know the IndyCar running costs in comparison to Grand Prix racing with when it comes to car design and the running costs. I know IndyCar is actually owned by NASCAR, basically, as is IMSA, and they have a lot of rules in place to reduce cost and make it as competitive as possible. So I think, in real terms, I think the running cost is less, but you basically have to base yourself out there and have a home hub. I know United Autosports, who are based in Yorkshire, in the World Endurance and the European Le Mans Series and the Asian Le Mans Series, they do it. Their LMP2 team have now decided to do an IMSA package for a couple of years, where they've decided to have a US operation alongside their European and World Endurance Championship operation, and they've now based themselves partly out in the US. So it's going to be interesting if the relocation costs, getting sponsors on board, and also getting, either moving all your staff over or bringing new staff in. There's got to be a lot of planning that goes into this in order to make it a success. But the fact that one team has decided to make the jump, but Prema are quite a big motorsports team in a lot of categories, more than just Grand Prix racing. They are a big team. They race in a lot of categories. So they're probably going to have a lot more funding and a lot more infrastructure in place to do such a move, where some of the smaller teams may not have that same funding, infrastructure and structures in place, and budget. You've got to think about budget. Now, I believe IndyCar is the regulations are there to try and reduce the running costs. So I think there's a lot of manufacturer input with the cars. Same as in IMSA, they do try and reduce the running costs as much as possible, which is why I love watching LMP2 and LMP3 classes, because they are really cost controlled categories within endurance racing. So there are balanced performance, and they try and, as I say, try and reduce the running costs, which is why you're now seeing a lot of client teams for some of the hypercars, like Porsche have got multiple customer teams in both WEC and IMSA. There's more Porsche cars on the grid than anyone else. So because the running costs are actually, no, I wouldn't say restricted, but are lower. It's a lot easier to run a team as a customer team with limited factory support because the running costs are capped. Look, yes, I know I did say we can have a general hangout chat as well, but Elon Musk is not my cup of tea. He's verging on like Bond supervillain kind of levels and Marvel supervillain kind of levels at this point. Not a fan of Elon Musk. Never have been. I'm not a fan of Teslas. I think they're dreadful cars. They're badly designed and they're full of flaws, and they tend to blow up quite badly. And their quality control is shocking, and their construction is terrible, and they tend to fall apart. My mum's neighbour's got a couple of Teslas, and he's had to have them completely resprayed and repanelled multiple times because they just rot. They're not as their quality control over in the Gigafactory is clearly not as high as it should be because they are dreadful cars. They are riddled with faults, absolutely riddled. And after 5 years, you've got a worthless piece of electric junk because the battery costs more than the car. And don't get me started on lithium mining because environmentalists don't want to hear about don't want to hear about it. WRC. I prefer more of the regional rally championships, like the European, the national championships, and the championships where you can just rock up with a second-hand car that you spent £500 or €500 on, put your roll cage in, put the skid pan in, alter the gearbox, maybe slightly tune the engine, and you've been down the local Reg Varley, local second-hand dealership with, what's the cheapest, nastiest car you got that still works, that will pass an MOT, and then you just rag it senseless. And if you write it off, it's only 500 quid you spent on the bloody car. I love those independent rally championships. And I haven't watched the World Rally. It's cost. It's got to come down to cost. I think, unfortunately, that the regs they brought in and the cars that manufacturers are willing to put factory support in. A lot of cars now are SUVs. You've lost the hatchback saloon type of cars that we've seen, back in the day in various rally championships. They're all SUVs people are buying now, and electric cars, and you just can't really rally an SUV because you'll roll it over. First corner, you'll roll it over and you've wrecked it. But that's why I like watching some of the Scandinavian championships and some of the other European ones where it's literally just get a second-hand car that is you don't mind wrecking, put a roll cage in it, so strengthen the chassis and subframe, put a roll cage in it, change the wheels, put a skid pan in, strip out all the unnecessary back seats and put racing seats in, put a racing fuel tank in. It doesn't cost that much to actually have a rally car for a weekend for a 2-day rally, as long as you have all four wheels pointing in the right direction and you finish. I don't think a lot of them care. But yeah, the World Rally, I think they got their regs wrong. I think the FIA have got it wrong. I think a lot of the manufacturers just aren't willing to spend the money on supporting a factory team at the moment because cost. I think they've got their costing wrong. I think they've got the regs wrong, and it's not been the same since the early 2000s. And you can partly blame TV deal on that, lack of exposure, and you're getting less viewers. You're getting less fans going to events, and it's a product. It's a casualty of the times. It's just not as entertaining, especially when you've got now less manufacturers. Now it's definitely lost something. The 80s, 90s, and 2000s was peak rallying, and the 80s was before my time. Group B and all that, where they were just ridiculous cars, like dangerous. But it's gone the way of a lot of sports. It's got to evolve. Right. Good evening. I never get notified when you go live. Hit the bell notification. I just go live when I feel like it. I know I don't really have a regular upload schedule, but as I'm on a week off work, and the weather's been crap. I was meant to go down the New Forest today, but as the weather's not been great, I'm still not 100%. I've been in the flat. I went to the shops earlier. That's as far as I've been, but I'm still not 100%. Still got a mild chest infection. You may not hear it, but actually, there you go. Every so often, I have to clear my chest out by having a bit of a grotty cough. So I'm a lot better than what I was, but the weather's been so damp today, which is why I'm doing my washing tomorrow and doing my housework tomorrow. But yeah, put the bell notification on it, may notify you. I know there is an issue, and it's an ongoing issue that YouTube had for many, many years, where subscribers to channels will have the bell notification fully on rather than just subscribe, and they're not getting notified. But I feel for like my North American and Australian viewers, because if you're on the other side of the world and there's a massive time difference, and today, for example, I mean, let me just have a look at how many videos I've actually done today, just to give you an idea. And of course, then you've got to factor in time zone difference. So let's say you're in North America, so you're 5 to 8 hours behind. Okay, so it's what, 5 p.m. here. It will be midday in New York, and it will be, I'd take 3 hours off. It'll be what, 9 o'clock in the morning over on the West Coast. And I know I've got viewers in Washington, in the Seattle area, because there is someone from a city called Pacific who watches almost every live stream I do and almost every video I do. So I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 videos today, plus this live stream makes 7. So let's say I woke up at, I think I did my first video at 7, 8 o'clock this morning. You take off 5 hours. That's really early morning on the East Coast, and it's late evening on the West Coast. It's middle of the night. Can you imagine if you had the bell notification on and you lived in the US with a 5 to 8 hour time difference? Let's say it's 8 in the morning. It's midnight on the West Coast, and that's going off, and it's the middle of the week. You'll be wanting to blow your brains out. Like, you'll be going mad. So I do feel for those who decide I'm going to turn the notification bell off, but I'm going to check up on the channel when I wake up or when I get in from work every day, see what's been recently posted. You can do that, because my phone going off. There's a few channels I've got the bell notification, and it goes off. So I've had to put it on silent. But yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, there is an issue though where some people have the bell notification on and they're not getting notified. That seems to be a regular occurrence with a lot of channels who've reported this, with subscribers leaving comments going, didn't get the notification. So it's an ongoing issue that I think just the amount of YouTubers and the amount of with the servers and obviously all that data and people using their servers, it can be an issue. I think it's just a bit of a software issue that YouTube have their end and Google have, as the parent company, have their end, but it's an ongoing thing that rears its ugly head every now and then. Britain's women's ice hockey, ice hockey's grown massively in this country over the last, I'm going to say, 20 years. Obviously, we had some dark days following the Super League's collapse, but it's rebounded really nicely. And I think the men's national team doing really well has, I think, helped drive participation levels and growth from youth level to beer league to rec hockey to professional. It's grown massively. I think Liam Kirk getting drafted, even though he didn't actually play in the NHL, he did play in the AHL. Bad injuries, now playing in the Czech Republic, I think helped. There are other players. I think there's a couple of players in the national squad who are currently in some NCAA programs who could potentially go in another draft in coming years. So there's definitely the potential for more players from the UK to get drafted by the NHL. So we shall see. What Group B and Group C in rally and sports car? Nah, the safety aspect. We all love that risk aspect with motorsport, but the safety issues. I mean, those cars were bloody fast, yes, but they were notoriously unsafe and dangerous. And there's a reason why we've had so few fatalities in motorsport over the last couple of decades, whereas 80s and 90s fatalities were almost daily in any motorsport category. The severe injury and fatalities, it was far too common. And while we appreciate you've got to have balls of lead, balls of steel, and in some cases boobs of steel if you're a woman, they do. I mean, hats off to anyone who competes in any form of motorsport, be it bikes, cars, trikes, quads, whatever it may be, speedboats, whatever. It's still inherently dangerous. We're trying to make it as safe as possible. We can't guarantee you're going to live. There have been fatalities in recent years, but there are lost when they happen now. They are shocking. When they happened with Group B and Group C, it's happened. They weren't as shocking until Ayrton Senna. If Senna hadn't died and it was just Ratzenberger, I don't think we get as many safety changes through the FIA that we did, because it was a big name racing driver who died at the time. And then you get Dale Earnhardt Sr. Dying as well. Only, what, was it 4 or 5 years, 6 years after Senna? You get these two real big household names in motorsport dying a short time apart, a couple of years apart. Suddenly the safety changes come in that were needed long before they had their fatal accidents. If it was just Ratzenberger, I don't think we get the safety changes that we ended up getting, because Senna and then Earnhardt both died in a very short space of time, only a few years apart. I think that really shocked people. But yeah, it was far too common. I've actually seen Group B and Group C cars really up close. I've seen them at open days and events. I've seen the Mazda Group C Le Mans winning car, and I've seen the Jag Group C Le Mans winning car. Actually touched them, actually sat inside them. Yeah, those cars were fantastic. They weren't bloody safe, I'll tell you that. Burst fuel tanks. You're on fire, and they just you didn't want to crash one of them. You weren't getting out alive, or if you did get out, you'd be really badly injured. And so safety's come a long way. So unfortunately, they're a thing of the past. It's a shame that we can't hear those noises and that speed and the handling. But even now, cars are even faster. There's more power to weight ratio now. They got faster, lighter, more nimble. That the aero's changed. I'm happy where endurance racing's at and where the regional rally championships are at. Not necessarily the world rally, but the lesser rally championships are at. I wouldn't bring them back. They're great historical vehicles, but that's where they belong. He did an experiment on FIFA, and the game thinks Venezuela would do quite well in UEFA qualifying. You mean FIFA qualifying? CONMEBOL, because Venezuela's South America. But no, Venezuela have got a very good. They've had some great young players. I think they play under 17s or under 19s World Cup final against England a couple of years back, and they lost to England and they came runners up. So they've got some good young players. They're South American. I mean, football for a Venezuelan or any South American is escape from poverty. You put them in UEFA. You look at South and Central Latin American football players. They've all got great skill and great close control. They learn that by playing in the slums. Is that ball control and movement off the ball. They've got great technical ability, but also in South America, they are known for being exceptionally aggressive and defending with structure is not a thing, which I think hampers a lot of South and Central American teams. And yeah, they've got to compete against baseball, and they've got to compete with a lack of funding, no infrastructure, corruption, and high crime. I mean, it's Venezuela right now is a, I wouldn't say it's a failed state, but it's not necessarily the nicest place in the world to live and be an athlete. But their best players in baseball and football play in North America. That's the nearest. So the MLS and Major League Baseball, you look at team lists, and there are a lot of Venezuelan players in those sports. And there's even a fair few motor racing drivers as well in based in North America. So you look at it, and that's where they go. And when they get seen as talent, especially as motorsport and in football, they end up in Europe, where the money is, or they stay in North America because it's a decent wage. They got out of Venezuela, and they can earn a decent living But yeah, no, it's difficult when it's not your biggest sport nationally, and you have to compete. I mean, I didn't watch or hear. I didn't follow any of the games last night. I know there was that security alert, and that security alert is still in place this evening. There's also a security alert for the Grand National, partly because the eco-mentalist animal protesters, but ISIS have basically come out and say target sports events. I think they're probably going to be more targeting the Olympics and the Euros, but there was a terror alert issued a security alert issued in regards to the Champions League. They went ahead, nothing happened. But yeah, no, it's only a first leg. Arsenal they're still learning it. There's still some of these players are getting that extra experience. I think it will benefit Arsenal in the medium to long run. You have to lose some to win some, and I think the management, as in the ownership, Arsenal have finally realised we've got to give a manager time, and they've given Arteta some time, and I think he's repaying them. They've got a bit more stability now, which they didn't have at times. They are spending a bit more in the transfer window now. What are people complaining about? There's always been, when it comes to the knockout stages, 2 games on at the same time, 2 games on the Tuesday, 2 on the Wednesday following week, and then the return legs. There's always been. I don't know what people are complaining about. They're having a meltdown. It's always been that way. There's always multiple games on at the same time. It'll be the same in the Europa League on Thursday. It'll be the same in the Conference League. There'll be 2 games on at the same time. What are you waiting for me to do? Stagger the kickoffs. It's the same in the FA Cup. It's just, I can't believe people are complaining about that. They've got to play these games. They've got to try and keep kickoffs the same, partly to avoid match fixing. I mean, Christ, I think a lot of sports fans are becoming very, very entitled and forgetting that this has always been the case. But I also understand that because now multiple games are on at the same time for media purposes like TV and the internet streaming services, people have got far too comfortable with having a lot of media access. Back in the day, there might have been 1 or 2 televised games on out of, let's say, 8 in Europe on a given night. Every game wasn't actually televised live in every market. So be thankful you had the choice of 2 games to watch at the same time and the choice. Of course, if I was to have a BT Sport or TNT Sport subscription, yeah, that would be annoying for me trying to cover 2 games at the same time. I'll have to have 2 monitors going, and it makes it very, very difficult. And I just don't have that kind of attention span, and that would cause me to have a complete and utter meltdown. But it's the same in the World Cup and the Euros. The last group stage game is they play all the games at the same time in the group. So I don't understand why people are complaining. I really don't. Just cherry pick a game. Go, right, that's the game I'm going to watch as a neutral. Bang, I'm going to watch that game and be happy. If your club's playing, you watch that game. If your club's not playing and you're not going to be a neutral, don't have to watch. You just keep the score update. It's not hard. People don't think the reason why they play both games at the same time is to avoid match fixing, because in the next round, one of these clubs is going to face off against 2 of these clubs are going to face off against each other. So if teams know the result, there's the ability for fixing to occur. Just headache. I just do not understand this. I think fans have got the fact you have the option of 2 live games to watch tonight and last night. Just pick one. It's not hard. And if that game is a bit crap, switch over to the other one. It's not hard. Or go to a sports bar where they have both games on at the same time, and then no complaints. Or actually, if you claim you're a true fan, get a ticket. Which I know is very expensive and not it's easier said than done with ticket allocations selling out in minutes. But there are ways where you can work around that. Well, they can. It's not as lucrative to fix a semi, really. But Champions League. I mean, when you get to the latter stages, especially if you're a team who's not experienced that kind of intensity or that level of competition, in the sense of being that far into a competition like a knockout stage, and Arsenal haven't necessarily had the best history in Europe in recent seasons. There's a lot of players that wouldn't have experienced that kind of match, that kind of intensity, and that haven't got that far in the Champions League. So it's a new experience for a lot of the players. They are a reasonably young squad. It's a learning curve. It is a learning curve. I wouldn't be too angry with the Arsenal team. They are learning. Even at the highest level, even the best players will say, "Look, I've still got more to learn. I've got to change my game. I'm learning new things. Things are different." A good pro will go, "You always learn something new every week," and so you know, some teams you just get that winning mentality. You got to this stage again. You know how to deal with the pressure. You know the cauldron that is the stadium, the expectation. You know what it takes to get to a semi-final or a final, and get over the line. And Arsenal are learning that, and they are a very young team with a young core. This can only be a good thing for them, and benefit them. Eve, afternoon, Jordan. Nice to see you in the chat. I won't. This live stream won't be as long as some of the recent live streams we've done because I've got to sort my dinner out at some point. But yeah, no, it's been interesting, as I say, doing resuming the club history series. As I say, I didn't watch any of the highlights. I haven't seen the match review. I've heard there's been a lot of discussion again about penalties and VAR and refereeing standards. And I think I have to do my annual refereeing standards video for all sports because I'm seeing a lot of comments in a lot of sports chat rooms and fan pages and on social media and on YouTube and comment sections about quality of refereeing and it being a very mixed bag in a lot of sports in recent years. So there is that. What do I know what to eat each day? Food. At the moment, I might have hot dogs this evening actually, or I might have some spam fritters. I'm basically keeping things basic at the moment. Money's a bit tight. I've got to sort out my council tax actually, and I'm having a long-going battle with the council at the moment. But yeah, no, I have a rough idea of what I want to eat each day. Oh, bugger! It would help if I actually bought what I wanted to eat, which is super noodles. But I love my super noodles. Don't like pot noodles, like super noodles. I find them a superior noodle. When you're talking about what's better, pot noodles or super noodles are superior, far superior, and you get more for less. So if you're on a budget, ramen noodles are pretty good and super noodles are pretty good. Pot noodles are far too much preservatives and E numbers in them and salt. Super noodles seem to have a bit more texture and consistency, and they're just nicer. Do you think Russia and Belarus ice hockey will be made to start from the bottom division when they do return? I don't know how the IIHF are going to do that. I really don't. How they're going to integrate them back into the international system? I would assume so. Other teams may protest getting bumped down, or they just expand the World Championships with an extra team in each group as a temporary measure until they can work out what's going on. I think that's a very difficult question to answer when you get national teams being readmitted after a suspension of any kind, and same with club teams as well, where you place them. But I would assume there'll be some kind of deal struck with the IIHF and Belarus and Russia and their governing bodies in order to integrate them back in to the international fold. But that, especially with the Russian team, they're going to put bums on seats. They've got some great players. Belarus have got some pretty decent players as well. So they're going to be a draw internationally. That's going to improve. Oh God, I hate my mustache. I'm going to have to shave this off. Annoying me. That's going to definitely get eyes on the product. It's going to be controversial when they do vote because the IIHF have to vote on this and the members have to vote on this. And I don't know how, if it has to be unanimous or 2/3 majority or 75% of members, but it's going to be interesting when they do decide to allow them back into the international fold. Are they going to put them at the bottom? Because both Belarus and Russia will easily just fly through the divisions. It might take a few years, but at the same time, if you get them back in the top tier, that again, is going to be controversial. Whatever they decide to do is going to be controversial. If they decide to keep them banned, it's going to be controversial in some quarters. If you readmit them in whatever level you readmit them in, it's going to be controversial. So there's no winners out of this. It's going to be a very difficult one to do. It's going to be controversial. It's going to be causing a lot of discussion in regards to the international sporting community. But especially the Russian team, that's going to put bums on seats. That's going to create eyeballs on the product with the TV audience. And there's going to be a fair few Russian players hypothetically available for selection if their teams don't make the playoffs in the Stanley Cup playoffs or go out in the first round in the Stanley Cup playoffs. That would be available for selection. They can still put a pretty stacked team on the ice in regards to if they use just KHL players for the World Championships if they were readmitted tomorrow. But it's an interesting one. I don't know how the IIHF are going to go about it, but they have to think of something. But I remember when South Africa, I was only very young, but I do remember when South Africa were readmitted to competition following apartheid, and it took a few years for them to get up to speed in football, cricket, and rugby union, but they won the Africa Cup of Nations in '94. They won the Rugby World Cup in '95, and then they were pretty dominant in cricket off the bat as well. So it didn't take South Africa long to get up to speed in international sport. When they were readmitted following the apartheid ban, we'll see. But that was a different time. Sport was a bit less professional at the time, even though it was professional in all but name, or was professional. But it's going to be interesting. But a lot of the Russian players play in the NHL and some other European leagues outside the KHL. They're all fit. They're all playing. Same with the Belarusian players. So I can't see it being a problem. It's just obviously, working out the logistics of it, and it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult readmitting them. There'll be those that say they have to start in the bottom divisions and work their way up. There'll be those that say, well, let's plonk them back in the World Championships and expand it by a team in each group, and expand the World Championships by a team in each group in the top tier to get them in, and then maybe have a double relegation to get it back to normal. I don't know how you're going to do it, but there's going to be some teams that are going to, or some nations within the IIHF that are going to, be difficult to placate and keep happy in regards. It's the same with the IOC. It's the same with International Athletics Federation. It's the same with any governing body going, we're going to readmit these guys into qualifying or into tournaments, because a lot of them you have to qualify for. Ice hockey is one of those few sports where you're seeded by group, and every team plays a World Championship game every year. So every nation plays in the World Championships every year, just in different groups. So there's no qualification. The only qualification you have is for the Olympics. I think the IOC will have a big say on it. The IOC will have a big say on it. But we'll see what happens. The players have been playing professionally. The players are all fit, so I can't see there being a playing issue. I can see. Well, I don't know. I think Kazakhstan's having a bit of an awkward relationship. Same with countries like Azerbaijan as well. Kazakhstan's having a little bit of an awkward relationship at the moment with their bigger neighbours to the north. There's a bit of it's a bit awkward at the moment, and a lot of the Kazakh players play in the KHL. A lot of the coaches coach in the KHL, and that's caused problems with their coaching setup at the last World Championships last year, where some of their coaches were not allowed to coach the team because they were Russian or they were based in Russia. So they had to completely rejig their coaching lineup, which did impact the team when some of your coaches aren't allowed. But again, we'll see what happens. But a lot of the Kazakh players actually play in the KHL, so they were allowed to participate. So it's an awkward one. It's difficult, but the players are all going to be fit. They're all playing right now, so we'll see what the IIHF decide to do. It's a bit late now to readmit Russia and Belarus into this year's World Championship structure because the tournament, some of them have already started, like Group A, Group B, C, D, all the various nations. But at some point, in the next 12 months, they're going to have to come up with a solution and have meetings and have votes on where to put the Russian and Belarusian teams. Yeah, there have been. But there's a lot of people with dual nationality through parentage and residency. So again, that's an awkward one. I'm not a fan of athletes swapping nations for a variety of reasons, but we are where we are. We'll see what happens in that regard. It's a difficult one. It's an awkward one. All the various international sports governing bodies, the FIA, they're still neutral athletes. Some of them have swapped where their super license is granted. I know there's one Russian who's now racing out of Oman. There's another one who's racing out of Dubai with his, racing license. One out of St Kitts and Nevis in the Caribbean. So there are some who've changed their nationality so they can still compete without restrictions, and there are others who are going on with no flag against their name on a international athlete kind of haven't. The Grealish and Declan Rice. I mean, yeah, they've got Irish heritage, but that's an awkward one. That created a lot of division both here and in Ireland with both FAs and fans and the media. I remember the Declan Rice one really had some people up in arms, especially over and Grealish to a certain extent, but more Declan Rice over with the FIA. FAI, the Football Association of Ireland, there was a lot of discussion around that, very controversial. Haaland, could have actually represented England. That's very, very interesting. I think he was born in Leeds, if I remember correctly, because his dad was playing at Leeds at the time. Or they were living in Leeds at the time, but maybe he was playing for Man City in the end. But I mean, Wilfred Zaha's now, I think, is it DRC, Congo or something, but Wilfred Zaha's another one. Born here, raised here, but represents country of parents' birth. There's quite a few. It's a difficult one. It is. There's no right or wrong answer, but we do need to look at international rules when it comes to international selection and I remember Eduardo. Was it Eduardo for who represented Croatia, and he was Brazilian and he played for Arsenal. There were a couple, I think, who did that, and there were some very awkward. How long have they got the right residency? Have they lived it? They need to look at the residency rules and other international selection rules, but every sport does. Every sport does. We've seen it in a multitude of sports around the world, be it Olympic or professional, and we've seen this argument before about selection rules. Both codes of rugby are grappling with it. Diego Costa is a real big one because he played for Brazil and then he played for Spain. He's not overly popular with either fan base at international level. He's a very controversial player. Very controversial in Spain, very controversial in Brazil. He's a very, very, very controversial player. He is, I think, the most famous, yes. But again, there was one that represented Russia at the 2018 World Cup. I forget his name, but it was a Brazilian who represented Russia at the World Cup, who had lived there for so long. Wagner Love, he's remember him for CSK Moscow. Peter Odemwingie, he was half Nigerian, but Di Stefano did it for Argentina and Spain back in the day for Real Madrid as well. There's been loads. It's not a new thing. This has been happening for donkey's years, and we're going back even to the 1900s and 1880s when rugby union, rugby league, football were in their infancy as international sports. So this is not a new thing. Di Stefano is a very famous case from the 50s, Argentina and Spain. So this is not a new thing, as I say. Did he represent Colombia? I'm not, I know it was Argentina and Spain, but did he? I'll have to look at that. I'll have to double check that one. Wikipedia might be telling you some fibs. But we've seen athletes in a variety of sports represent more than one nation, either through marriage, especially with female athletes, parentage, and residency. So I'll have to look at that Di Stefano one. I knew it was Argentina and Spain when he was at Real Madrid, and he's possibly one of the greatest players of all time never to win a World Cup. One of the greatest never to win a World Cup. But there are some interesting ones and some interesting examples. A lot of what we're discussing is football, but look at rugby union, look at rugby league, especially at the last Rugby League World Cup and the last Rugby Union World Cup as well. Cricket, another one, quite famous with a lot of players switching nationality. I'm not so clued up on the North American based athletes, but I know a few of them have switched between Canada and the US, or US and Mexico, in a variety of sports, mostly at Olympic level, and most of them aren't household names either, but it does happen. No, very, very interesting question, and very, very interesting topic as well. One that does deserve, should I say, more research. Another thing that I want to research more is something that I found. Which club in Switzerland did I find that's part of this group of what they call the club? Oh yeah, FC St Gallen, the Club of Pioneers. So FC St Gallen in Switzerland were founded in 1879. So they're a very, very old club, one of the oldest clubs in existence. They became a member of the Club of Pioneers in 2016, which was actually founded in 2013 by Sheffield Football Club. And there are various entry criteria to be part of the Club of Pioneers. You've got to be in continuous existence, and you've got to be the oldest club in your country before you were even allowed to have admittance, and you've got to be in continuous existence for the entire time. So I found that really, really interesting about St Gallen from Switzerland. Another interesting one is, what's another interesting one? FC Young Boys with their name. I always wondered where the name came from. It's a mimic of Zurich Old Boys, and Zurich Old Boys were a club, and they decided to call themselves the Young Boys, basically as a cheeky piss take, which I found quite interesting as well. Unfortunately, they play at the Wankdorf Stadium, so I always laugh with that one. Servette started out as a rugby club 10 years before they adopted football as one of the club sports, and obviously the football section is the most successful bit. They still actually play rugby at Servette, by the way, in another department in the club. Which is interesting. SK Braun, I look at this, and two blokes in a cafe sat down, and then 8 other blokes turn up and met with them, and they went, "We're not happy with the state of football in Bergen. Let's form a new club." Christian K. Gran and Berger Geistland, 2 blokes in a cafe in Bergen in 1908, going, "We don't like football in Bergen right now. We're not happy. Let's form a new club." Roland Geldner at FC Basel going, "I'm going to place an ad in a newspaper for people. Let's form a football team. I'm going to play. It's like placing an ad on social media. I want to start a football team. Would you guys be interested?" And 11 blokes turned up so they could form their first team. That's ridiculous. FC Zurich, their co-founder and first captain, Joan Gamper, went on to be the founder member of Barcelona 3 years later. I mean, that's something that I didn't know existed. Grasshopper, a student called Tommy Griffith, came up with the idea. He had a 20 Swiss franc grant he was given, and then he got some other mates from, I think, Manchester Grammar School, or one of the grammar schools in Manchester. And the reason why they play in blue and white halves is they needed a kit, and one of them had a Blackburn kit, so I managed to acquire a Blackburn kit, and that's their team colours. It's like Rotherham United, a merger of 2 clubs in 1925, Rotherham County and Rotherham Town, and they just reused Millmore Stadium that one of the other clubs had played in before. So there's that. And I look at some of the size of some of these stadiums in Switzerland. The Leitgrund has 26,000. So Jacob Park is over 38,500. Brand Stadium in Norway is 17,500. The Alida Stadium in Malmo is 22,500. The Stade Geneva is over 30,000 for Servette. The Wankdorf is 32,000 all-seater. Kyburn Park for St Gallen's nearly 20,000. The Stade de Tourbillon in Sion is just over 14,000, and the Stade Brugge. I love this one. Stadion Brugleifeld is just over 9,000, so that would be like a League One, League Two club size stadium. But some of these stadiums for a lesser league are actually quite sizable for some of these, clubs in perceived lesser leagues. So I'm really looking forward to continuing the club history. I think I might do a few clubs in Austria next. I think let's have a look at some Austrian clubs tomorrow. That'd be quite interesting. And then maybe look at some clubs in Belgium. There's some really good clubs in Belgium to look at. You've got Anderlecht, Standard Liège, Charleroi. I can't remember, it's Royal Charleroi or Racing Charleroi, Brussels FC, and then in Holland you've got some ones that aren't called Ajax. Yeah, there's some very, very sizable stadiums. I'm going to have to get some of the old notebooks out. They're all over there on my pile of books and stuff. I've got several notebooks, about 3 or 4 notebooks over there. So I'm going to go through them, and then I'm going to look at some of the stadium capacities. But some of them are reasonable sizes. And I'm surprised with the size of some of the Swiss ones. I really, really am. But obviously, they've got to have stadiums that meet UEFA and FIFA standards for European club games and internationals. And I think a lot of them were built or refurbed in time for the 2008 Euros, which they co-hosted with Austria way back when, to bring up their capacities. And as obviously, let's have a look. Let's have a look at what I've done in this notebook. So, the FA Cup 4th round, Ipswich Maidstone was the first thing that I wrote in this notebook. So I've only had this notebook going a few months. Liverpool Norwich was a good game. Quick look at channel viewership at the moment. I'm going to revisit that because it's been very, very interesting in recent weeks, the channel viewership. There's some Six Nations games that I covered. NRL teams yet to win a premiership. NFL teams yet to win a Super Bowl. Channel viewers all time from the UK. That was a viewer request, the viewership figures from the UK, I seem to remember. NHL teams yet to win a Stanley Cup. An interesting look at interestingly obscure places in the USA channel viewers are from, and I did find some very, very, very interesting places. There's a viewer or viewers in Pacific Washington, USA, which is in the Seattle metro area, who are watching quite regularly at the moment. Discussing whether the NRL will ever place a second team in New Zealand. More Six Nations stuff, more Six Nations. FA Cup 5th round videos. The Vegas doubleheader, so that's about a month ago now. More Six Nations. Although it looks like the England-Ireland game I couldn't be bothered to finish watching that. The review of the first round of NRL season. More Six Nations. More FA Cup stuff, the quarterfinals, a couple of games there. AFL drug scandal, that's a couple of weeks ago. And then we get into the current club history series, starting with Rotherham, going through Grasshopper, FC Zurich, both Zurich clubs, FC Basel, SK Brann, Malmo, Servette, Young Boys, St Gallen, Sion, Aral, and obviously the news coming out of the NRL in regards to South Sydney, which I'm going to double check to see if Jason Demetrio still has a job, because I think he's done. I don't think he sees out the weekend. Don't think he sees out the weekend, but we'll see on that. I'll just check my text messages because I've had some text messages. Right, let's have a look at South Sydney, because this South Sydney situation, if you're a rugby league fan, been an utter mess coming out. Last couple of years, it's been all West Tigers. We've been debating about the tyre fire, the complete shambles that is the West Tigers, or they seem to have now stabilised. But no, it looks like now Josh Schuster has been given permission to leave the Manly Sea Eagles. So he's been given permission to leave the club immediately. I've got to do a video on this. he's not even doing well in reserve grade. They gave him his new contract kicks in at the end of this season, worth about I think $800,000 a year. Yeah, he's been dropped to reserve grade, hasn't regained his spot in first grades, and you can't drop Ben Travojevic. You basically playing in one of the positions that Schuster can play, and you can't drop Ben Travojevic playing too well, and he hasn't got a position in the halves because, well, that's working, and he'll be fourth in line in the halves. So yeah, I think he's played his last game for the Manly Sea Eagles. I can't see him getting back in. Well, do the French part of Switzerland understand the German part, the Italian part, and the Romansh speaking part? Well, they teach all four languages at school. So yes, most will be bi or trilingual. There's four official languages in Switzerland. You've got German, you've got Romandy French, so you've got Swiss German, which is different to the German you'll hear in Germany. So you've got Swiss German, you've got Romandy French, which is Swiss French. You've got Ticano kind of Italian. So Ticano, and there's a couple of club histories we'll be doing on Swiss clubs based in the Italian part of Switzerland. They speak kind of like with a regional dialect based around the city of Ticano, and in Switzerland. They have their version of Italian, which is not Swiss Italian, is different to mainstream Italian. It's very similar to Italian that they speak in Lombardy. So there's a Lombard dialect. And then you have Romansh, which is a mix between Italian and Romanian and a bit of German. Do German? Yeah, they do. Yeah. The German they speak in Switzerland is similar to the German they speak in Austria and Liechtenstein. So there's that. I don't think Arsene Wenger speaks Romansh. I really don't think Arsene Wenger speaks Romansh because not a lot of people do. Only about, I think, 80,000 people have a basic understanding. About 30,000 speak it on a daily basis. It's a really rare language, but it's official language. It is. But no, the Swiss German, Swiss French, Swiss Italian, and Romansh. Romansh is really weird. It's like Italian and German and Latin and Romanian. Basically, you shove it in a bowl, you stir it up, and you get some words coming out. It's basically like trying to understand a drunk Dutch German person who's spent a lot of time in Italy going, "Hey, my name is Paolo, but schnell," and it's just like what, and their spellings are really weird, really odd spellings of things. But not a lot of people speak Romansh. It's only spoken in fluently in one canton, which is Graubünden, or Grisons, which is the French way of saying it, which basically means grey leagues. Graubünden, which is right in the east of Switzerland, right against the border with Austria and Liechtenstein, right at the far end, the least populated canton, and it's for people per square mile, and it's the one with the most wilderness, and you're in the arse. And it literally is, you go to that canton, it's like you're in the Rocky Mountains in the US, or think of Banff National Park in Canada. You are literally in beautiful landscapes. You may be driving for 2-3 hours to see like one person. Well, that's it. It's weird. They have bears out there and wolves. So it really is like you are in the Rockies or the Andes. You're literally, you'll drive for an hour, maybe an hour and a half. You might pass a little village and like, I'm really going up this mountain road. It is terrifying, but it's stunning scenery. St. Moritz is in Graubünden, and so is Davos and Klosters. They're all in Graubünden, which is the canton where they speak Romansh. It's weird, I know this. Giving a bit of a geography lesson and a geopolitical lesson. Gather around, children. It's time for a brief geography lesson. So basically, the bit of Switzerland is very beautiful with all the highest mountains right next to Austria. They speak a weird language called Romansh, which is basically, it's one of the closest languages to Vulgar Latin, which is basically Latin used by the common man in the street during the Roman Empire with all the slang words in it. And an Italian can understand bits of Romansh, a German can understand bits of Romansh, or a German speaker, and the French can understand a little bit because there are Germanic words and Romance language words, hence why it's called Romansh. But it's basically like really really like listening to a drunk person. So a German could understand a Romansh speaker as kind of an Italian, but Italians and Germans wouldn't understand each other unless they've studied, basically. Italians is all with the hands, German is all with the efficiency and the long words and the National Socialism. But it's really that part of Switzerland. Jokes aside, is stunning views, stunning mountains, lakes, ravines, gorges, glaciers. You still have the Bernina glaciers in Graubünden. The history is fantastic. Cajuns, they speak Anglo-French Creole, so they will understand some French words, and obviously they speak English. But Cajuns have their own Cajun Creole. Creole languages always have a French influence. So you'll. I've got a friend. My friend Will's from Mauritius, and he speaks Mauritian Creole as with all the slang they use. So a Cajun from Louisiana and parts of Texas will there'll be certain French words and certain sentences where the English and the French has got corrupted, and so you'll get a lot of the phrases, slang words, and spellings will be different from French and different from English, but Creole is what they speak. They speak Cajun Creole. So Creole is a mix of native French and then whatever language the nation normally speaks. It's a language formed between English and French, basically, and some native is it Arawak or Carib Indian word, because there's on every Caribbean island that's either French or English or even Dutch, they speak Creole languages. There's always got to be a native indigenous population with the words. That's one thing I have. That's one thing I have learned, which is sort of how Afrikaans has become a language, where you've got the base language being Dutch or Low Dutch, which is coastal Dutch, I think. Frisian, I think, is the dialect. And then you have influences of French and English into Afrikaans, and then you have the native indigenous like Zulu and Shona. They pick up, and then you'll get Afrikaans as a language, which is basically a Creole language. It's just a Dutch Creole language, which is Afrikaans. And then you'll get a Namibian Germanic kind of version of Afrikaans in Namibia, which is similar but different. Yeah. Now we're doing a language history lesson, children. So we've gone from geography to history now. It's fantastic. Welcome to class, children. Could you turn your textbooks to page 47, chapter 3? Paragraph 4. Look at diagram figure 4.4, please. Yeah. I had to do that little joke with a very posh act. I should really try and find. I have a jumper somewhere which has elbow pads on it. I should really get that out. I'm your supply teacher today. Could you turn to your textbooks, page 37, chapter paragraph 4, and look at the diagram on the page opposite. I'm wasted. I like working outdoors. So yes, if you get out your Scramble for Africa textbook, please. Oh God, it's a thick one. There's some pictures in it. Please look at the pictures while I figure out the lesson plan, children. Stop talking. Put that ruler down. And what is that? Is that a pornographic magazine? Yeah. Well, look. I mean, there's some characters on the bins, yeah. But I did struggle at school because of my ADHD. But I still love reading, and I still love researching stuff, which is why I like doing the club history videos. I was always very, very good at doing impersonations, accents, and comedy as well. Comedy was my defense mechanism with some of the lads, and that getting them to laugh just distracted them from beating the crap out of me. So thank you, sixth form, for being absolute monsters of men when I was only 13, like hands like shovels. Got to enjoy the first 15 giving you a beasting, I tell you. But no, I've been I can do accents and impersonations and I can make anything fun. So when I do a lot of my club history videos, I do put a bit of humour in there, especially PSC young boys with the Wankdorf Stadium. I mean, oh Jesus, playing on FIFA back in the day or Football Manager, and you're playing against young boys, and you're playing at the Wankdorf. Just when you're playing multiplayer on that, and or you've got your mates sitting there, and you're like, well, who are we playing in the Champions? Oh, we're playing young boys from BSC Young Boys, and we're playing away at the Wankdorf, and you just have a bunch of lads just pissing themselves uncontrollably. But one of my old neighbours actually was from Bern originally. She was born there. And yeah, she actually had a little young boy's scarf and a flag. Even though she was an elderly pensioner, she actually still fondly remembered her youth watching that team in the 50s win all the time. And I think she was at that European Cup semi-final, the home leg. So you can see the impact it has on people. But you wouldn't have realised she was born in Bern, in Switzerland. She had a very, very, very slight accent. So soft. Jeez. No. Well, Prince Andrew. No. Oh, God. Oh yeah. I'm assuming you guys have obviously seen the video or the videos about English football fan chants and some of the funny ones and some of the naughty on YouTube where, for some reason, the go-to chant is the Jimmy Savile ones, and obviously I can't repeat them on here because YouTube will go, right, we're taking this video down, you're getting banned, you're getting a strike, and you won't get monetized. We'll delay your monetization, but we don't want that. We want to get monetized. So I can't repeat some of them I've heard at football, but football fans make anything into a chant. But yeah, BSC, Berner Sport Club, young boys who play at the Wankdorf. It's the Wankdorf Stadium that gets me because Juventud and Juventus is quite a common team name across South America, which is translated to young men or young boys. They decided to go with the English version. They could have called themselves BSC Juventud, which would mean the same thing, just in a foreign language. They decided to go with actually having their name in English. For that time, when they formed as a club in the early 1900s, that was unique. Apart from Genova, who called themselves Genoa Cricket Football Club, everything was in the native language, just, or the translation from English to or Fußball. Fußball is the Swiss German way of saying football, and in Italy it's calcio. And obviously, when we get to Lazio, they have Lazio SS. It's not because they all joined the SS, although Lazio was the fascist football club in Italy. Because when we did Roma's club history last year, Roma is a formation of multiple clubs, and it was designed with the Italian army basically putting pressure on the football clubs to have a counterweight to Mussolini's government, and that's why AS Roma exists. Atletico Atletica Sportiva Roma, and then Lazio Societia Sportiva is the one team in Rome that refused to merge together, and they went, nope, we're going to stay as we are. And if you look at Lazio's crest, it has very, very fascist origin. Has an eagle on it. Yeah. Well, Roma's one has the city of Rome with the she-wolf and Romulus and Remus. Lazio's you could see being an imperial kind of standard in the Roman Empire, or Starship Troopers kind of eagle on a shield, bit National Socialist. Yeah, Lazio are known for having very right-wing ultras that are bordering on neo-fascist. They have a bad reputation across Europe, a bad reputation across Italy. A lot of clubs don't like them, because a lot of the ultra groups are left-wing leaning, and Lazio are very right-wing leaning with their ultras. So when I get to the Lazio video, I've got to be a little bit careful with the politics there and the history bit of it. But basically, the fascist party of Italy under Mussolini gave the backing to Lazio to remain as Lazio, and I think encouraged them to refuse to join AS Roma in that merger. I think back in, oh God, I'm going to have to get the notebook out, but back in the 1920s, basically. I think it's about 1925-ish. So Lazio is older than AS Roma, and they refuse to join the other clubs in the merger. So that's going to be a very interesting video, and really interesting. I remember when Paolo Di Canio was towards the end of his career playing for Lazio, he did the fascist salute, and he also got a fascist tattoo as well. So Paolo Di Canio is a very controversial figure, obviously, in English football. For A, pushing over a referee when he was playing for Sheffield Wednesday. B, his managerial career, which was hilarious to say the least, but also highly controversial, both at Swindon, Sunderland, and did he manage at West Ham? I can't remember. I know he managed Sunderland and Swindon, and his time at Sunderland was an absolute shit show. And he was very controversial in Italy as well. He got a lengthy ban, a massive fine, and I think was investigated by the police at one point because, very similar to Germany with the Nazi salute, he gave a fascist salute to the Lazio ultras. I believe it was in a game against Roma, and it led to a riot. There was a lot of stuff going on. Got in a lot of trouble. Very controversial player, very controversial manager. I'm trying to think where Paolo Di Canio's coaching now. I know he's coaching somewhere. I've got to do a video on Paolo Di Canio. I have to do a video on Paolo Di Canio. The colourful career of player and manager, football former player. Colourful career of Paolo Di Canio, player and manager. That's going to be a really, really fun video to do. Paolo Di Canio was so controversial, but my God, he was a great player. That goal for West Ham against Wimbledon with the scissor kick volley, that obviously Van Persie did his own one for Arsenal against Charlton, but that goal, that cross, I remember watching that. That was a brilliant goal. Possibly one of the greatest goals ever scored. And I'm not joking. Paolo Di Canio. Did he manage West Ham? I have a funny feeling Paolo Di Canio managed West Ham. I don't know why. I know Slaven Bilic, his former teammate, did. I'm going to have to do videos on Slaven Bilic, Thomas Repka. He has I think it's either the number 88 or Mussolini. I can't remember. It's one or the other. I know he did play for Lazio and he did rile up, get the ultras going, and they have a lot of them are neo-fascists. I'm trying to. I'm gonna have to look at this up now. I wonder if he's actually still coaching. I know he's been I know he managed Swindon, and he weren't controversial at Swindon. It's when he got to Sunderland that things just exploded and hit the fan. And right, let's have a look at Paolo Di Canio. Such a divisive figure, but my God, he was entertaining to watch. I actually remember when he got who did he? I've got to find out. The referee he pushed over has since passed away, sadly, which is very sad. Oh, go away! I don't want to install the app. Fuck off. Thank you. Wikipedia telling me to fill the app in. No, I'm not. Wow, when I type in Paolo, Dybala is the first player that comes up. Souza is the second player that comes up. Then a Filipino actor, a Brazilian Paulo Costa, Paulo One Shop. Yes, One Shop was brilliant. Former, I think Paulo One Shop, fantastic player. Paulo Fonseca. He doesn't even come up in the top list of Paulos. Paulo. Oh God, there we go. Got him. Takes a while to find, and his Paolo spelling's different. That's why. Paolo Di Canio, born 9th of July 1968, is an Italian former professional player and manager. So I'm assuming he's not managing at the moment. During his playing career, he made over 500 league appearances and scored over 100 goals. So, clutch goal scorer. More of a support striker. As a forward, he primarily played as a deep lying forward, but he could also play attacking midfield or as a winger. Regarded as technically skilled but temperamental. Okay. Born 9th of July 1968 in Rome. Ooh. Youth career, Lazio. So he started his career in 1985. Wow. For Lazio. He played there till 1990. He went out and learned to Ternana. Then he went to Juventus between 1990 and 93. Then he played for Napoli. Oh, that's tasty. Between 93 and 94. He then went over to Milan between 94 and 96. He then played at Celtic for a year in the 96-97 season. Then he goes to Sheffield Wednesday in the 97 to 99. So he spent 2 years at Sheffield Wednesday. A fair bit of that he was suspended. 99-2003, he played for West Ham. I remember he scored a goal against Man United in a FA Cup game where Barthez just sticks his hand in the air for offside and keeps his hand in the air, and Di Canio puts it through his legs. He then played at Charlton for a year. He goes back to Lazio for 2 seasons between 2004 and 2006, and then he ended up playing at a club called Cisco Roma. Must be a very new club then, between 2006 and 2008. His international career, he never played for the senior side. He only played for the under-21s 9 times and the B team once. So he never made a senior appearance. Managerial career, Swindon Town, 2 years, 2011 to 2013, and Sunderland, 2013, and that was it. Right, let's have a look at what he got. SPFA Player of the Year, Player of the Season for West Ham. Right, here we go. He got an 11-match ban for pushing a referee in 98, and I'll discuss that incident. And then he got negative publicity for his allegiance to fascism. So he's openly a neo-fascist. So he's very right-wing in his views. So according to his political views, he's a fascist but not a racist. Okay. 2011, he entered football management with Swindon Town. He did get them promoted to League One in his first season. So Swindon Town, he wasn't controversial. Sunderland, he was. He was appointed in March 2013, but he was sacked by the 22nd of September the following season. They only won 3 of 13 games. He was manager. So, okay. Right, let's have a look at his early life. He was born in Rome in the Quarticicalo working class area, which was Roma, the Roma neighbourhood, and he decided to play for Lazio. You couldn't make that one up. So, he's not very popular in Rome. As a young boy, he was addicted to cola and similar drinks called palocca. A slang term meaning lard ball. He was fat and knock-kneed, and he needed to wear orthopedic shoes. But I never hid. My response was to exercise to remember how the person I am. Right, okay, so bullied as a kid. Yeah, I can see fascism. He signed for Lazio in 85. Celtic. Right. So this is the Sheffield Wednesday. Paul Alcock. That's it. On the 6th of August 97, he signed. He joined Wednesday for a transfer deal at 4.2 million at the time. Whilst in Sheffield, Di Canio was the club leading goal scorer in the 97-98 season with 14 goals, and he was a fan favourite. However, September 1998, Di Canio pushed referee Paul Alcock to the ground after being sent off whilst playing for Sheffield Wednesday against Arsenal at home at Hillsborough, which resulted in an extended ban of 11 matches and being fined £10,000. He then signed for West Ham for 1.5 million. So Sheffield Wednesday paid 4.2 million for him. He went to West Ham for 1.5. So that incident actually devalued him. Sheffield Wednesday wanted rid of him. They're like, you can have him. They were willing to take the loss on the transfer fee. He had not played. His last game for Sheffield Wednesday was pushing Paul Alcock, the referee, over. Harry Redknapp, was manager at the time. On signing Di Canio, admitted he was taking a chance, but said the player he can do things with the ball that people can only dream of. Di Canio said of his ban, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. West Ham has given me a big chance. I'm very happy. And he did score in his first goal in his 4th game. Okay. Playing against Blackburn, Di Canio made the first goal in a 2-0 win for Ian Pearce, and then he went on and scored the second in the Jesus. His first goal was in a 2-0 win against Blackburn. He helped them achieve a high league position, 5th. They qualified for the UEFA Cup through the Intertoto Cup. What a waste of time the Intertoto Cup was. He's the March 2000, the goal of the season with the flying volley against Wimbledon. Possibly not in Premiership history, but of all time. Sorry, that's a ridiculous goal. Goal of the decade in 2009. Hammer of the year. He was quite famous. There was a player down injured, and he could have scored a goal, and he grabbed the ball from across because Everton goalkeeper was lying injured after he did his knee, and he couldn't get up. And he got an ovation for that. He did get booked at the time for a deliberate handball, but that booking was rescinded. Alex Ferguson tried to sign him from Man United. Never knew this. But Di Canio remained at West Ham. He did have, I remember Glenn Roeder, yes, the late, great Glenn Roeder, who sadly died of cancer. He had dropped him. They were struggling. And Trevor Brooking came in. He scored the winner against Chelsea. And they were relegated after a 2-2 draw. He goes to Charlton. Return to Italy, though. This is, I think, where... yeah, goal celebrations. Right. So even though he had already signed an extension to his Charlton contract, he returned to Lazio in 2004, taking a massive pay cut because Lazio had run out of money at this point. Lazio fans were happy to have a Rome-bred Lazio supporter in the team again because Nesta had left in 2002. He scored in the Rome derby, as he had done in '89. They won 3-1. However, negative publicity that Di Canio generated for Lazio, including his intimate relationship with the Ultras, who are known to be neo-fascists, and their increased influence due to his presence in the team, coupled with problems with some teammates and coaches, exasperated club president and majority shareholder Claudio Lotito, who they already had a difficult relationship. As a result, Di Canio's contract was not renewed in the summer of '06. During several of his games for Lazio, including during goal celebrations, Di Canio made a fascist salute to their right-wing fans. He subsequently signed with Cisco Roma in the lower division. He retired in 2008. Political views. Oh, God. Right. In 2005, he characterized his political views by declaring that he was a fascist, not a racist. Oh. Okay. His use of the Roman salute towards Lazio supporters, a gesture adopted by Italian fascists in the 20th century, has created controversy. Documentary uses of the salute included in matches against arch rivals Roma, who were anti-fascist, and Livorno, who were very, very left-wing, almost communist. A club inclined to left-wing politics. Di Canio received a one-match ban after the second event and was fined €7,000. He was later quoted saying, "I will always salute as I did because it gives me a sense of belonging to my people. I saluted my people with what for me is a sign of belonging to a group that holds true values of civility against standardization that this society imposes upon us." His salute has been featured on unofficial merchandise sold outside the Stadio Olimpico after the ban. He has also expressed admiration for the fascist dictator Benito Mussolini in his 2001 autobiography. Paolo Di Canio, the autobiography, published by the Libreria dello Sport, he praised Mussolini as basically a very principled, ethical individual who was deeply misunderstood. Oh, God. In 2010, Di Canio attended the funeral of senior fascist Paolo Signorelli, where mourners were photographed making mass fascist salutes towards Signorelli's coffin, Signorelli being convicted of involvement in the Bologna massacre. Now, for those that don't know about the Years of Lead, I've done content on the other channel a few years mine. A neo-fascist terrorist attack which killed 85 people and wounded more than 200. I need to do more about the Years of Lead. I covered it in the Maxi trial video I did on the other channel, which has got a lot of views. Di Canio's political ideology has been a source of controversy in the course of his managerial career. When he was appointed manager of Swindon Town, the trade union GMB terminated its sponsorship agreement with the club worth around £4,000 per season because of Di Canio's fascist views. Yeah. Well, Van Hooijdonk, I could look at doing top 10 most controversial players, just players, not just Premier League. He was appointed manager of Sunderland in 2013. David Miliband, a Labour politician and former Foreign Secretary, subsequently stepped down. Miliband stated that he had taken the decision to resign in light of the new manager's past political statements. Oh, God. It also met opposition from the Durham Miners Association, which threatened to remove one of its mining banners from Sunderland's Stadium of Light, which is built on the former site of the Wearmouth Colliery, as a symbol of its anger over the appointment. In a profile piece in 2011, an unnamed source asserted that Di Canio was not an ideological fascist, attributing his behaviour to his psychological history, particularly his former compulsive tendencies and pronounced mood swings. In the same article, Di Canio said that he was not politically active. I don't vote. I haven't voted for 14 years. Italian politicians, all of them, think only about themselves and making money. Personal life. God. Now we're talking about the tattoos. Di Canio has several tattoos, including one on his right bicep, in Latin the word dux, meaning leader, or in Italian, Il Duce, a nickname for Benito Mussolini. Oh, God. I can't defend this guy at this point. Great player that he was. Sky Sports Italia was forced to apologise after Di Canio appeared as a pundit in September 2016 in a short-sleeve shirt, thus revealing the tattoo to television viewers. He was later suspended by Sky Sports Italia. His back is covered with a tattoo of fascist imagery, including an eagle, fasces, which is the axe surrounded by wooden stakes that the Roman Senate and the Roman legions used to carry, and a portrait of Mussolini. Oh, God. He also has a West Ham tattoo on his left arm and a tattoo of his father on his chest. Di Canio has spoken of the growing influence in his life of the samurai culture, which was linked to the samurai culture and Japanese imperialism before World War II. Oh, God. And of the Japanese spiritual mentality from reading Mishima and the teachings in traditions of Hagakure and Bushido. Now, Bushido is ritual suicide. Oh, God. So basically, this guy is your prototypical neo-Nazi, right-wing, neo-fascist, Japanese neo-imperialist. So basically, very right-wing is the answer about Di Canio. Yeah. God, I'm fascist but not a racist, but I don't vote because I hate politicians. But that's what fascism is removing democracy. So he's based, he would do really well with the EDL, I tell you. And good old Tommy Robinson probably wants to nosh him off. Yeah, nice guy then. Yeah. In order to explain the Bologna bombing and what happened in Bologna during the years of lead, if you watch on the other channel, the History Bot, then the Maxi trial video that I did a bit of research into the years of lead. It was similar to the troubles in Northern Ireland. A lot of political terrorism. Same with a lot of the terrorism across Europe, like ETA in Spain, for example, and in France, and the Corsican separatist movement in Corsica in France, and the PPK, Kurdish terrorist group that goes around blowing up Turkish businesses in Germany and other countries. Very similar period. You had left-wing militants and right-wing militants, and there were a lot of neo-fascist groups as well as communist-backed groups and left-wing groups. And the Bologna bombing is one of the worst acts of terrorism in Italy ever. Shocking thing that happened in 1980, and sort of has the same impact as the Omar bombing in 98 in Northern Ireland, and very symbolic moment for the Italian people because of the amount of casualties and no one's fully taken responsibility, but a lot of evidence indicates the far right. And the fact that he went to one of the guys who was implicated in this terrorist incident and he went to his funeral. Di Canio is very controversial. And the fact he grew up in a Roman neighborhood and he decided to join the Lazio youth system and is a Lazio fan. Yeah. When I get round to doing the Lazio video, that's going to be a very controversial video. I just know it is, because Lazio does divide opinion both in Italy and across football fandom. And then Van Hooijdonk. Let's have a look at Van Hooijdonk, because I knew he was controversial. But Thomas Repka, that's a player I want to do a player because he was sent off a lot. I think he had 38 red cards, if I remember. I believe Thomas Repka had 38 red cards. He was sent off a lot. God. Thomas Repka was really just Thomas Repka and Slaven Bilic playing in the same team were just fantastic. Right, so Van Hooijdonk. Right, let's have a look at Van. I can't remember why Van Hooijdonk was controversial. I'm trying to remember why, but we'll have a look. I'm assuming, right, we've got two Van Hooijdonks who have played. You've got Sidney Van Hooijdonk and you've got Pierre Van Hooijdonk. So we'll look at Sidney van Hooijdonk first. No, he's too young. He's only 24 years old. And he's playing in the Championship for Norwich. So I'm assuming it's his dad. We're assuming it's his dad. So we've got Van Hooijdonk. So we will go with... There's another one. There's Nathan Van Hooijdonk. He's a cyclist. So Sidney Van Hooijdonk is currently playing. And I'm assuming then it will be his dad. So that will be Pierre Van Hooijdonk. All right, we'll go for have a look at Pierre Van Hooijdonk. Because here Sidney Van Hooijdonk's only in his 20s, and I don't think has played in the Premier League. So Pierre Van Hooijdonk was born in '69, played as a striker, played in multiple clubs across Europe, prolific goal scorer, 46 times for the national side, scored 14 goals, and he played at the '98 World Cup, Euro 2000 and Euro 2004, bending free kicks, greatest free kick specialist of all time. He played for Nottingham Forest between 97 and 99. And he also played for Celtic and loads of clubs across Europe. Most of them, he played for Benfica, but he played at Fenerbahce, but he played for a lot of clubs in Holland. But Celtic and Nottingham Forest. So let's have a look at his career. Roosendaal, Celtic. Made his Celtic debut on the 11th of January 95 against Hearts at Hampden Park. Favourite. Outstanding for Celtic. Okay. The 96-97 season was an unhappy one. He fell out with the chairman and the owner, Fergus McCann. He often ended up on the bench. And he was told by Gus Hiddink he would not be selected for the national side at the time because he wasn't a regular. He left over a wage dispute, stating that here we go. He eventually left Celtic over a wage dispute towards the end of the 96-97 season, stating that the reputed £7,000 a week raise he was being offered might be good enough for the homeless to live on, but not for an international striker. He then went to Nottingham Forest. He arrived as Forest were in deep relegation trouble, struggling to maintain their position in the Premier League. He made his debut for Forest in a 1-1 draw against Blackburn on the 11th of March, 97. It was hoped it would help spur their survival. But he scored just 1 goal in his 8 games. Although only one of those games was lost, the other 7 were drawn and Forest were relegated. He pledged his future to stay. It was an unqualified success for him in Forest. They won the title and they got promoted back up. He scored 34 goals alongside strike partner Kevin Campbell. He clashed with manager Dave Bassett over the setup of the team and decided to move to PSV Eindhoven. Newcastle also offered money for him, but they only wanted to let him go for 10 mil. He was a regular in the Dutch squads. He played in the '98 World Cup. After the World Cup finish, he discovered that the promising strengthening to the Forest squad to enable him to cut back in the Premier League had not transpired. Indeed, his strike partner had been sold to Trabzonspor. Scott Gemmill was dropped as he refused to sign a new contract, and Colin Cooper was being allowed to leave. Van Hooijdonk asked for a transfer. The new owners refused. Van Hooijdonk announced he'd been told previously he could leave the club at the end if he so wished, and he felt betrayed by the club's owners who had failed to deliver on their promises, and he could no longer play for the employers. Forest, desperate for a striker, refused to be transfer listed, so Van Hooijdonk announced his intention to strike, but he kept training with NAC Breda. He was criticised by both fans and teammates, Steve Stone and Dave Bassett, player and manager. Club refused to listen to offers for him as they needed a striker, and the standoff lasted until November. He agreed to return, and he played in a game against Wimbledon. By this time, the club were in relegation trouble, bottom of the league, without winning 9 games. He played sporadically between then and the end of the season. He scored 6 goals in 19 starts. After his goal against Derby, most of his teammates refused to celebrate, instead going to Scott Gemmill, the man who crossed the ball to him. He also scored a last-minute equaliser against Liverpool with a free kick, which protected Forest's unbeaten run against Liverpool that went back to 1984. Wow. He scored to put Forest up 1-0 against Leicester. They lost 3-1. Then bottom of the league, Ralf Rangnick, who was coach of Stuttgart at the time, remember him, Ralf Rangnick, Man United manager, wanted to take him to Germany, but the chairman of Stuttgart refused, and he was seen as too expensive for a 30-year-old. He ended up going to Vitesse Arnhem, or SBV Vitesse, and then he played for Benfica, Feyenoord. He ended up Fenerbahce and other clubs. Personal life. He's got one son, Sydney, who, as I say, is playing at the moment for Nottingham Forest. Oh, it was reported in May 2008 that Van Hooijdonk had been a victim of fraud that had lost $2 million to a scam involving him investing in a Chinese textile company. Well, that did not exist. Couldn't make that one up. But yeah, his son's currently playing for Nottingham, for Norwich City. But yeah, so he basically has a falling out at Celtic and a falling out at Nottingham Forest in the UK. Yeah, he did go on strike. Not very popular. Let's have a look at Thomas Repka. Because Thomas Repka was an absolute beast. Thomas Repka is a Czech former player who played for Baník Ostrava, Sparta Prague, Fiorentina, West Ham, and CSKA Budějovice, the Czech national side. He's currently playing amateur football. He's still going. Wow. And he's 50 years old. He's playing amateur football for Škol Crvené Janovice. Wow, he's still going. Good man. He was born in Slavšin, Czechoslovakia, and was sent back. Wow. West Ham, 167 games for West Ham. He only scored 12 goals in his professional career at club level and 1 goal for the Czech Republic. But 167 games for West Ham between 2001 and 2006, never scored a goal. Disciplinary problems. Okay, so Thomas Repka. Repka is notorious for his lack of self-control, aggression, and disciplinary problems. During his... Oh, wow. He received 20 red cards in his playing career. He also attacked a game official and a TV cameraman in September 2007. Ooh. So, for Baník Ostrava, he had 2 red cards. Sparta Prague, he had 4 red cards. Dinamo CSKA Budějovice, he had a red card. For Fiorentina, he had 6. For West Ham, he had 4. And then for the Czech national side, he had 2. And the national under-21s, he had 1. Thomas Repka, what a player. What a player. Wouldn't want to... He was a nut job. Like, complete unhinged nut job. Great defender, though. He would knock 7 bells. There's currently a guy on Instagram called Brexit Tackle of the Week. There's a guy who posts videos of all the bad fouls and shocking tackles. Thomas Repka should be on there. Wow. He's been divorced twice. He's been in prison for 6 months for advertising sexual services on the internet in the name of his ex-wife. And then he got downgraded to a community order. He got 15 months in jail for fraud. Because he sold luxury rental car, which he did not own. 2 weeks later, Repka was sentenced to 9 months in jail after 2 previous suspended sentences for driving under the influence were converted to jail terms due to his other convictions. So he's actually been to prison a few times. Thomas Repka. We don't get characters like Repka anymore. What a character. What an absolute character. What a lad. But also, what a naughty boy. I've got to do a video on Thomas Repka. Just Thomas Repka. My youth, he was like one of the hard men of the game, like Vinnie Jones. He was held in the same level of like intimidation level as Vinnie Jones and Ruddock, Neil Ruddock, Razor Ruddock. Just held in that same level of this is ridiculous. So there's that. Oh God, there's my Facebook. Just I remember some players. So you had Neil Ruddock, you had all of the crazy gang. So you had Fashanu, Sanchez, Vinnie Jones, Dennis Wise, and then you have Thomas Repka, who and Slaven Bilic was a bit mad as well as a player. Slaven Bilic was just, but Thomas Repka, 20 red cards, like that is ridiculous. Ridiculous levels of. I think he had the world record at one point for being sent off, a hell of a lot. I think Sergio Ramos has now surpassed him, but that and Pepe, but that is just ridiculous levels of disciplinary problems. I'm not sure, like, if anyone saw. I mean, if you guys remember watching Thomas Repka play, but Slaven Bilic was in that side. Di Canio. When you've got Di Canio, Bilic, and Repka in your team, you're going to have some send-offs. Like you're going to have disciplinary issues with players. And the fact that Thomas Repka's been to prison a couple of times as well. Julian Dix, there were a couple. Lee Hendry, who played for Aston Villa. Was a bit of a naughty boy. Lee Bowyer, everyone knows about. He's not. I remember when he was playing for Leeds United, he stamped on the player's head on the floor. There've been quite a few gnarly players, and then you have Thomas Repka, and he just takes the biscuit with just. I mean, can you imagine Thomas Repka playing in the Premier League now? It would be. I mean, Marco Materazzi only managed 8 games for Everton because he was suspended for most of the rest of the time. There were some players back in the day in the 90s and 2000s that just couldn't play now. They would just be suspended every week. Banned, you're banned. I'm sending you off now. Just banned. But the game was different, and the game has evolved a hell of a lot and changed. Whether it's for the better or not, I don't know. But the game has definitely changed. And the players that I watched when I was a kid growing up and a teenager, like I remember Thomas Rositzky. I mean, like, great player. His career was quite long, but Karel Poborski. I remember when Karel Poborski still had his ponytail, and he played alongside Repka for the national side. And I remember when he played at Euro 2012, and I went, Karel Poborski's still playing? I was stunned. I thought he'd retired long ago. But Karel Poborski was quite an underrated player, and he played alongside Repka. Davor Šuker obviously played alongside Slaven Bilic for Croatia. Slaven Bilic is a cult hero at West Ham. He's a cult hero with Croatia as a player and as a manager. Slaven Bilic, really, he's a character. You don't get your Slaven Bilic anymore. He's a character guy you want in the dressing room because, high energy, emotional, stupidly. Slaven Bilic is a chain-smoking, pissed-up rock star in Croatia. Can you imagine Slaven Bilic now? The coach would be like, you're smoking darts, you're drunk. I mean, Slaven Bilic, known to like his spirits, known to like a pack of fags, cigarettes, smokes, darts, tabs, whatever you want to call them, hard drinking, hard smoking, has his own heavy metal band, and was a damn good player. But any reason why? I just think they just were very, very lucky with the talent pool they had and continue to have, and I don't know why. The 1990s, Gascoigne, Merson, Juninho, the club was a basket case in the 90s, really. They were. They lost 2 cup finals in the same season and got relegated. You couldn't make that one up. And they were all a bunch of alcoholics. Massimo Maccaroni, remember him in the mid-2000s? He was an underrated player. And Steve McLaren during their UEFA Cup run to the final, which they ultimately lost. And I think it was the semi-final against Benfica. Benfica just kept scoring, and they had to win by so many aggregate goals. And so eventually, it was everyone up front. We all have the 2-9, the 2-8-1 formation. Everyone up front, 2 centre backs. Everyone else is a winger or a midfielder. Just everyone go forward, and eventually they got through. I think it was like 5-6-5 or something. Ridiculous game. And they won a League Cup against Bolton with Stelios Giannakopoulos, I believe it was. Stelios for Bolton in their midfield. So Macaroni on one side, Stelios on the other. Ravanelli, just the 90s and the 2000s. This is why I always say this. The quality of football was better in the 90s and the 2000s than it has been for the last 15 years. Ronaldo and Messi would not have stood out as much if they played a decade 15 years earlier. That's my personal opinion. I think it would have been, Oh, you had macaroni and ravioli. I mean, or Ravanelli. I remember when Ravanelli was playing for Juventus, and he did his celebration where he put his shirt over his head. He's doing the airplane, and he stupidly and didn't realise he actually crashed into. I think he was playing against Parma, and he crashed into the goalpost and knocked himself out like cold. And I think, was it Lippi or Capello was Juventus manager? And there he's going mad because his players knocked himself completely sparko. And they've only got one sub left. And who they put on? And I think did they put Zidane or Vialli on? They had to put someone on because Ravanelli had knocked himself out celebrating a goal. Completely not. He is not moving. He shirt over the head, doing his celebration like that, and he went into slap literally straight at the goalpost, knocked himself out. Couldn't play on. He's all over the place. And they had to throw someone on. I can't remember if they put Vialli on or if it was Zidane, but they had to throw one of them on. And they weren't fully fit. It was all a bit chaotic. And I think was it Lippi? Was it Capello? Can't remember. But they were not. They were less than impressed with him knocking himself out. I remember the great Fiorentina sides of Batistuta. Just Batistuta. And then you had Veron and Crespo playing for Parma back in the day. Oh, Juan Sebastian Veron. Didn't really work at Man United for him, which surprised me because he was a very, very good player. Forlan didn't work at Man United either. Man United had a habit of signing South American players under Ferguson in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they just didn't settle and they didn't play their best football, but they played better at other clubs. Up on that. Well, Batistuta, Batigol, Gabriel Batistuta, brilliant player. I think he famously did that comment just to annoy the press, just to piss off the press. And just was a throwaway comment. But Batistuta was brilliant. You had Ayala at the time playing for Argentina. A very young Crespo. Crespo was a brilliant player. Fantastic. Hernan Crespo is such an underrated player. Esteban Cambiaso, who got Leicester's Player of the Year before they won the Premier League in the 2014-2015 season. He got Player of the Year for Leicester. In his final season, if he played one more season, he would have won a Premier League. But Esteban Cambiaso, fantastic player. You had Walter Samuel, brilliant defender, ridiculous defender. There were some great players for Argentina. I think some of the squads they put out in 98, 2002, 2006 were better than the squad that won the World Cup recently. And Messi couldn't really get into the 2006 side. And he was struggling to get into the 2010 side as well. Argentina had some Gabriela Hintze, who tried to take on Oliver Bierhoff in 2006 after that quarter-final with the penalty shootout. He wanted to punch on with Oliver Bierhoff, who's quite a big chap. But yeah, no, I've got to do some more Italian club histories like Fiorentina and Lazio. They're going to be fun. They're going to be a lot of fun. Torino is another club I want to do. That's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. Udinese, Morgan De Sanctis in goal, and Di Natale up front with Yacinta. Oh, Yacinta. He's gone to prison for firearms offences and links to the mafia. God, there are a lot of ex-athletes who end up committing some serious offences and getting involved with organised crime and not doing particularly well. But no, Batistuta, brilliant player. Fantastic player, Batistuta. That Fiorentina side was fantastic at that time in the 90s and 2000s. Absolutely fantastic. And he was a fantastic player. Absolutely. Just some of these players were fantastic. And it's amazing that we're not talking of Italian football and the players playing in Italian football now in the same level of admiration. The Italian league back in the day was stacked. Even an average mid-table side was stacked. I mean, George Ware, his goal against Chievo Verona, where he picks up the ball on the edge of inside his own box and just runs the length of the field and scores in a 1-0 win for AC Milan against Chievo. I remember that was that in '98? Was that the season before he went to Man City? I think it was. That's that. Yeah, George Ware, Liberia's president. Oh God, some of the players. I mean, just rattling off the names. Tomasi at Roma. You had Totti. You had Panucci. That was some of the Roma players who were fantastic. Just some of the talent that played in Serie A in the 90s and 2000s. It was stacked. It was a fantastic league to watch. It just was. It was just a great time to be a football fan. Great time. Oh, Brolin, the fattest Swede they could find in a pub. Famously struggled at Everton. I believe, when did Brolin go to Everton? I think it was at the same time Materazzi was at Everton, and he didn't do particularly well. Overweight, unfit, couldn't run, lost his first touch, just had a terrible time at Everton. But he was the reason why Gary Lineker retired in 1992, because he scored the winner against England in Euro 92 and Gary Lineker's last international. Thomas Bro, I think he went to Leeds and then he ended up at Everton. He was absolutely terrible. He was diabolical. But he had a really good spell in Italy. Really good spell in Italy. He was really good in Serie A. In a league it's hard to score in, where defenders were brutal. I mean, you've got Nesta, Maldini, both Cannavaros, the younger Baggio brother, who was a bit of a brick shit house. You had Costa Curta. You had just half the Italian national side was defenders, and then you got all the overseas players who played defence, like Walter Samuel, Javier Zanetti, a young Zanetti, because he had a career that seemed to go on forever. You had, oh God, I'm trying to think of some of the defenders, but Brolin, what a wasted talent. He was so unfit by the end. It was embarrassing how overweight he was. He did not look after himself. He didn't train. He basically was a bit of a playboy, and it did cost him because he was never fully fit, and he just liked boozing and partying and living the lifestyle without putting the effort in to deserve the lifestyle, if that makes sense. Wasted talent. The money got to his head, but his skill level was ridiculous. I think he played at USA 94 and just tore it up. He tore it up in Euro 92 and tore it up in USA 94. Brilliant player, but just could never stay fit. Wasn't consistent enough, and had issues with. He looked like Wesley Sneijder by the end. He didn't look after himself particularly well, and had fitness issues, and his ability was not in question. It was his application and his fitness. But yeah, he did quit football quite young, as did a certain David Bentley. Quit football at a similar age in his peak. And David Bentley was a brilliant player. But the reason why David Bentley went, I'm going to give it up, was he went, football players are overpaid. We're paid too much as an industry. Too many players are in it for a paycheck rather than the joy of the game. And I've fallen out of love with the game. David Bentley actually was a brilliant player. Loved the sport to begin with, and then he became very disillusioned when he was looking at some of his teammates getting paid really stupid money, and he's like, this isn't right. There's a lot of mercenary players, and he just went, oh, I'm done. And when it came to contract negotiations, when he heard about teammates whinging about wanting pay rises and contract extensions, he was like, I'm done. And fair play to him, he stuck with his principles and he retired young, which is a shame, but David Bentley was a damn good player. Very underrated, very good with both feet. I remember he scored a cracking free kick for Blackburn against Bayer Leverkusen in what is now the Europa League, on a pitch that should not have been played on. It was a terrible pitch at Leverkusen. He scored a free kick from like 35 yards, just a bullet, just bang out of his feet, quick, and it was a rocket of a shot. A brilliant goal. But then you got players like Tugai who just went on forever and ever and ever, and just had really lengthy careers. And then there's other players like Brolin and Bentley who quit the game in their prime for various reasons. But the fact that Brolin ended up being a vacuum cleaner salesman is quite funny, actually. I've got to do a video on Brolin. I have to, because Was it Lazio or Parma he played for? Can't remember now. I think he played for both. I'm not getting the phone out again because that impacts the internet connection and takes forever to load up. But yeah, we're having the same discussion about Latrell Mitchell in rugby league, and whether he's going to jack the NRL in and quit playing. He's only 25. He's even younger. Parma, yeah, Parma. They bankrupted themselves when you think about it. They had Broline, Crespo, Veron, a young Buffon on their books at one point. They had some. Parma was a stack side, and then they went bankrupt a couple of times. Partly because the ownership group owned the part of the Parmalat conglomerate, which was done for multiple. Parmalat, for those who don't know what Parmalat is, Parmalat was a dairy firm that specialised in cheese and milk. And their milk, by the way, was fantastic. It was really nice. It really was. And their cheese was fantastic. Really, actually quite nice. Proper Italian Po Valley, like buffalo mozzarella. You had the milk came in the cartons rather than the bottles. And it was really creamy, and you could do baking with it, cooking with it. Having porridge with Parmalat milk, baking with it. Your cake or homemade scones with Parmalat cream. Oh, anyway, I used to love. When I used to go to Italy, we always used to buy Parmalat as the dairy of choice, right? Anyway, they own banks. They own some banks and some other food processing companies, and they did meats and food processing. Anyway, they were being corrupt as hell, and basically the Parmalat group basically owned Parma, AS Parma. When Parmalat were done for their corruption, it basically bankrupted the football club, and the rest is history. Didn't Anthony Mundine quit and come back? Because I know he's gone into boxing, but Mundine is a very controversial character when it comes to rugby league. Anthony Mundine is very, very controversial. He's had his own spats with Latrell Mitchell and others in regards to the Spencer Leniu incident and other things online. They clashed quite a bit. He's been very, very public in his criticism of Latrell Mitchell, and they have clashed online, and they've clashed in the media. But Mundine's a very controversial character, very, very controversial character. He's not everyone's cup of tea in both the Indigenous communities in Torres Strait, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, and in the non-Indigenous community in Australia. He's very, very controversial. It's very controversial in the media. He's had a very, very good boxing career, though. He's a very, very good boxer. He transitioned to another sport really, really well, but he's highly controversial. I mean, I seem to remember he went on strike over a contract or something. It was a big contract dispute when he was at the Dragons. Very big contract dispute when he was at the Dragons, and he also liked to have a couple of darts on the go. He was known to be a bit of a chain smoker, but my God, he was a talented player. My God, so quick, so talented. One of the smaller players that actually played rugby league, but very controversial, very outspoken, and he has clashed with Latrell Mitchell over the whole Spencer Leniu thing and attitude things. But yeah, I believe he came back to rugby league, but I know he quit at a very young age, then came back and quit again. But yeah, Anthony Mundine, I have to do a video on him at some point and dissect his career and why he's controversial, because he is very controversial. But I don't think Mundine's a bad person. He's just very, very controversial in some of his views, and why he left the game and why going into boxing, and some of his clashes over certain issues on social media and in the mainstream media is a bit controversial. No, Latrell Mitchell. He's got to figure it out. It doesn't matter who he's playing for. I'm assuming there's got. I mean, I know obviously he wanted to be a fullback at the Roosters and all that, but the Roosters obviously clearly saw something in his temperament or his training or his application that basically said, "Look, we're going to let you go. You can go to whoever." And Souths came along and took him off their hands. So obviously the Roosters saw something in what was going to happen. They had foresight to go, he's going to be trouble. And bearing in mind, at the time he was at the Roosters, they were just getting over Bubbler, Todd Carney, Mitchell Pearce, the Dylan Napa tape had come out. So, the Roosters were, under the spotlight for player behaviour off the field, past player behaviour, and there have been some big things that happened even when Latrell Mitchell was playing there, especially Mitchell Pearce and his exit from the club and his issues where he got Jake Friend, Todd Carney. There have been several players that are high-profile players that have been caught misbehaving. Sean Kenny Dow was another one, and they. I'm not saying Latrell Mitchell's going to do what these players did with antics off the field, but they could clearly go, we need to change the culture of this club. And clearly, Robinson and his support staff and Uncle Nick, Nick Politis, obviously, he bankrolls the team. They clearly were like, there's going to be problems here. We've had enough problems with, Pearce and Carney, Kenny Dow, Jake Friend turned things around, so the boy Cordner, but other players, it's like, is this guy going to be worth the risk? And what is really interesting, yes, the Roosters haven't been back to a grand final, haven't won since then. But Souths have been to a grand final, but have fallen apart, and a lot of it's to do with Latrell Mitchell and his ego. And also, not long after they released him, and he went and he signed with South Sydney. Obviously, during COVID, during the lockdown, him and Josh Adokar got up to some really stupid behaviour in the outback, I believe, at Latrell Mitchell's property. They went up country to one of their family properties and were mucking around with unlicensed firearms or uninsured firearms and uninsured quad bikes and unlicensed quad bikes. And you're thinking, really? And they put it on social media and they advertised they were doing it. It's just like, I think the Roosters were right to let him go. I think they obviously could see this was brewing. And since he's been at the Bunnies, he's been suspended a lot. He's missed a lot of games through suspension, and then his fitness. At the Roosters, he didn't miss that many games. He looked slimmer, he looked fitter, he looked better as a player. And admittedly, he wasn't playing in the same position, but he definitely looked fitter, faster, more focused, and more in tune with his teammates and winning and being a more positive impact on the Roosters. Now, obviously, there clearly were issues with Latrell Mitchell and the Roosters because they could have fought a lot harder to keep him. They really could have fought a lot harder to keep him. And they allowed him to go to the Bunnies, but they get Crichton in return. So swap for swap, they get a player back. He goes there. They get Angus Crichton, which is not necessarily a bad player to pick up. So that strengthens your forward pack and potentially the centre channel should you have to play Crichton in the centres. Added a bit of back centre depth, but also Crichton's more of a back row forward. And, they decided to keep Mitch Orbison on for another year, which may or may not have helped the team. I don't know. But they decided to let Mitchell go. The Bunnies are willing to pay $1 million for him, which clearly the Roosters couldn't fit under their cap. They had to make some tough choices. They decided to let him go, and I think they're glad they let him go because he spent a lot of time suspended for what happens on the field, and then he got caught being a bit of a bellend off the field during the COVID pandemic, during lockdown, with Josh Adokar and others. I think Shaq Mitchell was involved in that as well, but he wasn't a first grader at the time. And ever since then, he's never been 100% fully fit. He's been suspended for a lot of dirty acts on the field. I think the one that really stands out is the Joey Manu incident where he just lines him up. That's the fastest I've seen Latrell Mitchell move as a South Sydney player, where he literally just sprints, goes hell for leather and takes his head off, shatters his face. That effort hasn't been there for his covering. Yeah, there's the dirty play, but that is the moment that I think Latrell Mitchell lost a lot of respect from a lot of rugby league fans for what he did to Joey Manu, his former teammate. That was that was deliberate in my view. That was absolutely shocking. There was no attempt to, tackle him properly. He just decapitated him. And there'd be those who go, we got this timing. You watch that incident, that was a shocking challenge. Deserved of a lengthy suspension, but he's had plenty. He's got 3 more games right now. I don't know if sacking Demetriou is the right way to fix things at South Sydney, but whether Mitchell's there long term, because he's there for another 3 years. His contract runs for 3 more years yet, till 2027, on $1 million a year for another 3 years. So South Sydney are in an awkward position with the length of contract and how much he's paid. The fact he's missed a lot of games suspended, but he's also missed a lot of games through injury as well. But the suspension, I think, is the more concerning. Players get injured. Sometimes it's not through their doing. Another player injures them. They fall awkwardly. They break a leg, do a dislocated shoulder. Injuries happen. But when you're missing games and the amount of games through suspension, I think it's somewhere like 14 to 18 games or something. I'm going to have to look at how many games he's missed through suspension whilst at South Sydney. I think it's in the high teens at this point. That's what hurts more when you're missing nearly a whole season worth of games because of suspension since you've been at the club in a 4-year spell, 4-year span. I mean, I know he got a couple of games at the Roosters. He got a few suspensions at the Roosters, but at South Sydney, it's been a recurring thing. So I don't know. I don't know how they fix the situation, but I think it's also disrupted and impacted the playing squad in a negative way. It's definitely divided that dressing room. It's more than just Latrell Mitchell and Cody Walker and the rest. I think it's now fractured completely into multiple groups. They're playing like individuals. The coach has lost the dressing room completely. And Cam Murray just looks overwhelmed. He puts his heart and soul on the line every week as a play, leads by example, but he's not a big talker. Damien Cook being dropped from the 17, that's a big decision. And there's no one else really as a leader in that team apart from Burgess. And, he's not even a starter at the moment. So there's a lot of issues there, and I don't know how the Bunnies resolve it, but I don't think sacking the coach is going to fix it. I don't think Mal Meninga is going to fix it either, because Mal Meninga has been lucky in his rep coaching career that he has informed players that are the best players in the world. South Sydney, they're not in form. They're all over the place. There's injury issues. There's a divided dressing room. There's players who clearly don't like playing with each other. I'm surprised it hasn't spilled over on the training paddock and they've had punch-ups. I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet. I'm surprised players haven't started to take swings at each other. But another thing that's come out, which I find very interesting, is every time Latrell Mitchell is suspended, he goes up to his farm in Taree and doesn't stay with the squad, doesn't train with the squad, doesn't hang around the facilities. He seems to treat it like a holiday. So he goes, I'm suspended, I'll just go up to my farmstead. I'll just go up to my land and not be around Sydney. That doesn't sit well with me at all. And that could explain why his fitness isn't great. Because every time he's suspended, he goes up to his farm. I don't know. I think he's on his day, he's a brilliant player. And at the Roosters, he proved that. And at times at South Sydney and in Origin, he's proved he can do, Greg Inglis type things. He can do immortal type things. I use Greg Inglis as an example because similar player, similar role, playing in the halves, in the centres, and at fullback. Very similar player. But he's looking like Greg Inglis at the end rather than Greg Inglis in his peak for his fitness levels. Greg Inglis by the end was done several years before he actually retired. Didn't get himself back into the right shape. But Greg Inglis had his mental health issues, which he's been battling, and fair play to Greg Inglis for being very open. And now he is getting the help that he needed when he was a teenager and in his early 20s. If he had had that help, I think Inglis would have been even more, imagine Greg Inglis getting that, being on the right medication and getting the right help. Can you imagine how good Greg Inglis would have been? Ridiculous. So Greg Inglis was battling mental health and addiction demons with alcohol. Can you imagine Greg Inglis sober and getting the support, the mental health support? Jesus Christ. Imagine how good Greg Inglis could have been. And Greg Inglis was a fantastic player. And I think with a young Latrell Mitchell, when he first burst on the scene in 2016, 2017, being likened to Greg Inglis, I think that's gone to his head a little bit. And then the contract that South Sydney gave him was a mistake. too much too soon. And yeah, you can see with Latrell when he celebrates a try, it's different. The Roosters, he always did the old bunny ears or the I forget what the animal is because there's an indigenous because you've got the goanna with English, which is that desert lizard that the Aboriginal people have in their artwork, the goanna. And Latrell Mitchell did the old like that, and that is in relation to I think it's a marsupial, and the Aboriginals put it in their artwork, and it's Aboriginal art is fantastic, and their culture is fantastic to understand and research and learn about. It really is, and I do suggest a lot of people do it. I do honestly suggest if you are going to go to Australia or you are an Australian, I know they do it in their education system. Now they do a lot of emphasis on the First Nations of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island cultures. And I forget at the Roosters, Latrell Mitchell, when he scored a try, he would do his. I'm going to call it the bunny ears, but I know it's in relation to like a marsupial that the Aboriginal art, and it's a cultural thing. But he did his celebration. He was smiling. He was happy, and you could see bang. They always use it in the highlight reels when Latrell Mitchell and they advertise the game. At the Bunnies right now, he's very angry in his celebrations. You can see he's getting really emotionally pumped up. He's not enjoying it. You can see his celebration has changed. He's not the same cheeky chappy at the Roosters. So there's definitely things going on. Yeah, there is a proportion of Aboriginal players that do struggle, especially with alcohol and gambling. But I've been watching a YouTuber called Spanian. He was an ex-Crim. He's an ex-Con. He's of Spanish descent, hence Spanian. And he's gone to all over these deprived neighbourhoods, all over Australia and Europe. And he's the Aboriginal community. When he's up in Darwin and Alice Springs and Palmerston, especially where they have a higher proportion of Aboriginal residents in the housing commission neighbourhoods or in the poorer neighbourhoods. Yeah, alcohol and drugs is a recurring theme that comes out with the community. And there's alcohol. It's complex. I suggest you watch his YouTube channel. It's easier than me explaining it. But it's a well-known fact that the Northern Territory is where a lot of Aboriginal people live as a high proportion of the population. And their crime rates are ridiculous for everything. Absolutely ridiculous. Darwin has it pretty bad in certain neighbourhoods. Alice Springs, the whole city is just crime riddled, and a lot of it's to do with alcohol, drugs, deprivation, and violent crime. And it's terrifying. It's really saddening. But yes, it is a known fact that a lot of Indigenous players, both in the NRL and the AFL, and to a certain extent the A-League as well, do have issues with alcohol and gambling and drugs. They really do, and it's really sad that they're not getting the support that they need. Even though the support may be out there, I think the leagues could do more. They really could. I know the AFL has been highly criticised for how they've dealt with Indigenous players and young players from rural communities. That includes non-Indigenous players as well, obviously, with what's happening at the Hawthorn Hawks and that ongoing scandal that's impacted the AFL in the last 18 months or so. And that's all gone quiet because of the illicit drugs policy, which is now blown up. And then you have what's going on right now with in the NRL as well with current and ex players, and there's been some high profile incidents. I'm going to use Jamie Roberts, and Ben Barber are what I would use as prime examples. But Jamie Roberts, Jimmy the Jet, is a prime example of an Indigenous player or former player who's struggled with definitely with drink. No, I think it's a problem in the NFL in general. And you look at the players on the player wellness pathway program. The players like Pat McAfee is a prime example. I think it has been a cultural issue and it has been a societal issue a well documented issue for a very, very long time. I don't know the fact. I don't have all the figures. I don't know the figures, but I know it's been an ongoing issue in all major leagues for some time. Jordan T2, or Jordan Tutu, former NHLer, famous First Nations player from Canada, famously alcoholism and alcohol problems. Famous one of the famous First Nations native Canadian players from the First Nations community. Was very public about his alcoholism at times and his battles with addiction. So, I think I don't know. I don't have the figures to hand, but the what's the player? Is it not wellness? God. There's programs. There's God. I know Mike Ribeiro, who was a former NHL player, is now in the retired and ended up going into the player assistance program. That's it, player assistance program, where it could be any addiction, or it just could be you're struggling with a family issue. There's a player assistance program which you can enter. Some players play while still going through these programs. Other players take some time away from the sport. But the player assistance program is basically a player welfare program for drugs, alcohol, gambling, and other problems, mental health. There's quite a few players who've entered the player assistance program for alcohol. I know that much. So Pat McAfee, who has his own show on the ESPN and YouTube channel, NFL, Detroit, Indianapolis Colts player, former player, public intoxication, got arrested for it on a night out, and had to enter the player assistance program. And he discusses that program in great detail with the testing regime and how long it lasted, and the level 1, level 2, level 3, stages. Quite a restrictive program. And if in order to stay in the NFL, he had to follow this program, and he couldn't, have any alcohol in his system at all, or drugs, recreationals. Otherwise, he has to go back to square one, and it impacts his ability to play and continue in the NFL. But yeah, the numbers are. I don't know the exact numbers. I don't know the exact numbers of Native Americans or First Nations players from the US who are NFL players. I know there's quite a few baseball players and hockey players. Not so knowledgeable on the numbers of NFL players, but there is definitely issues with alcohol, gambling, and drugs over in the US and Canada as well. And there are some well documented players in all the major leagues that have gone through that. But I couldn't give you the exact figures and numbers off the top of my head. But I know it's a well documented ongoing issue that the leagues face on a. Oh my god, my mustache is really annoying me. You can tell I've got bloody ADHD and OCD, can't you? This mustache is going to get shaved. I think this beard's going to get shaved off because it's got a great big bushy beard. I look a little bit of a old west cowboy gold prospector. All you know is the hat and slightly longer hair and a mule and a mining camp, and I could be a gold prospector in the Rocky Mountains, or a crazy wandering gun-toting cowboy. I am going more for the Civil War, US Civil War look. I don't know if I'm going to be a Yankee or a Reb, but I'm trying to pull off the Civil War look a little bit there. Might do some Civil War reenacting. But jokes aside, yeah, I don't know. I don't have the exact figures to hand in regards to players with those kind of addiction issues or just player welfare issues. It could be mental health. It could be that they're struggling with a health issue in the family and they need that bit of support network in place. They could go into the player assistance program because they've got a kid with a terminal illness or a very difficult illness, or their partner, or another relative may be struggling with a severe illness or may have learning disabilities like a child, and they need that support and that support network. And they may be quite normal away from the game. But I know some players have utilised that as well. They've entered the program, various player support programs, because they've got a child or maybe a parent that needs looking after, and they don't know the right way to turn, and it's taking a mental toll and an emotional toll on them and their families. So that doesn't get documented enough, that these player assistance programs are more than just drug and alcohol programs. They also have a mental health component and a family support component as well. And some of the clubs, individual teams do quite well with looking after their players and making sure their families are settled and can have, especially if they've got a child with complex medical or learning disability needs, that they also give them that support. So it's not just, these players paid a lot of money, leave them to it. Some leagues and sports do look after their athletes better than others. It's the post-playing welfare that is a major concern across a lot of professional sports. And now we're seeing lawsuits, we're seeing class action suits. It's more than just CTE. And I'm waiting to see with the AFL, especially a former player who takes the AFL to court over their drug policy. I really am. I'm waiting to see a former player go, hang on a second, the drugs policy is, why I'm still struggling today, or the post-playing welfare. We've seen it with the NRL and the Rugby League Players Association with their last CBA in regards to medical expenses and post-playing care being a key component of their battle with the NRL last season. And I think we're going to see it with the AFL with their next CBA, and we're going to see it with other leagues as well. Medical bills for retired players. They only last so long. I think it's only a couple of years, and you've got to have played so many games before you can get medical insurance or medical bills if you go private paid for, and the rehabilitation costs. If you are only a fringe player, you might have played in the lower levels of the sport, but only make the top level occasionally on a call up, and you haven't played, you haven't hit that game's threshold, you miss out on medical compensation for injuries and rehab. So I do think the players' associations in a variety of sports need to really stick up for the ex-players a lot more. And I think the leagues make a lot of money off the talent. When they're playing, they put bums on seats. They are the products. They are the resource. But a lot of them get just forgotten about when they retire. Very few actually, ironically, go into coaching and into the media and have, or into administrative roles when they retire. A lot of them leave sport altogether, and a lot of them do struggle to adjust from professional athlete to average Joe working on a construction site or running a business or working in retail or working in an office or starting up a startup company. A lot of them don't do that. Some do, and some do it while they're still playing, set up their own businesses so they are prepared for retirement, going, I've set up my hardware store, or I've set up my property business, or I've set up my clothing line, or I'm now set up a microbrewery and brewing my own beer, or just, so some of them do set themselves up really, really well. Others do podcasts and set themselves up in the media realm, but not on the mainstream media, and do quite well. A lot don't. So I do think the professional leagues and the professional sports do need to look after their ex-players a lot better than they do. There was a Man United player who was part of the class of 92 who retired quite young, became a postman. I forget his name, but he became a postman, and he was part of the class of 92. I see that pop up occasionally on social media. One of the class of 92 who was playing in the first team. He did make the Man United first team, ended up becoming a postman. There was another one who ended up becoming a used car salesman, doing really well for himself, and actually had more money as a used car salesman with his used car business than when he was playing football. So you can actually be a success, more of a success, not being a professional athlete, ironically, after being a professional athlete. So there are some success stories, but there's a lot of horror stories of athletes retiring and then falling apart. And it's more, I think it's not as common as, those in the media and on social media would have us believe, that all post-retirement athletes fall apart. They're all alcoholics. They all struggle with health issues. That's not necessarily the case, but there's a huge number that do struggle, especially those that were long-time professional athletes on long time. Is it Neil Webb? I knew he was in part of the class of '92, and he did play for Man United, and then he spectacularly went, you know what, I want to live in the real world. I've enjoyed it, but hang on a second, I think I'll probably be better suited being, in the real world and having. I've earned some good money. I've set myself up, and I'm going to go into a different career and look after myself, using the money that I've earned, I've saved. I can look after my family while still working, but I have a lot of money. I know there were some others who've set up restaurants, bars, shops, startups, microbreweries, used car showrooms, gone into the building trade. So some have done quite well for themselves. Some have invested and got a property portfolio. Some have literally started up their own podcasts and got into the media that way, through doing podcasts and social media. So some have done really well for themselves, others not so much. So I think the other Tenny Zalesniak, the one who had the kidney problem, the rugby league player, not the one who, although Tenny Zalesniak, the one who's still playing, is a partner in the business, has got their own watch company, Zalesniak. The Zalesniak brothers, the Tenny Zalesniak brothers, the retired one and the one who's still playing, have their own watch company called Zalesniak. They've set up their own watch firm, and they're doing really well. So some have really got, up here screwed on. Others not so much, and some just generally do struggle when they leave sport. Even with their businesses fail. They struggle with alcohol, prescription drugs, recreational drugs, gambling, whatever it may be. They can't adjust. They can't hold down work, and it is a battle for them. So we as fans should expect better. And then those who they've earned all this money, it's their own fault for not investing it wisely or spending it recklessly. I do think they need to sort out the contracts where these young players are getting paid too much too soon. And I do think the clubs, the leagues, the sports also need to do more to help protect and educate and prepare players for post-retirement and the real world a little bit more, because a lot of them have been in the system since the age of 11. They've never had a job outside of being a professional athlete. Some have, but a lot haven't, and they're just not equipped to live in the real world outside of professional sport. It's a recurring theme, and I've watched a couple of documentaries about when players retire. I remember watching a Four Corners one, which is the Australian version of Panorama. They spoke to about 3 or 4 ex-athletes and their struggles in adjusting post-retirement. One of them was an Olympian, couldn't get a job, kept applying, kept getting knocked back. One of them was a cricketer who's now a road tarmacker for a contractor. He's actually his father-in-law's company, and he's a road tarmacker, and he's on like $50,000-$60,000 a year, as it is on a standard contract, unless they get a big contract in. There's another one who's they followed 3 or 4 athletes, and they all of them basically said our sports governing bodies let us down. They did not help us in the transition. They didn't help with our medical bills, even though that was part of the CBAs that the various sports had, the collective bargaining agreements and all that. And they also spoke how tough it was, and how on social media and the general public and the general sports fans basically hammered them. I said, well, you're all paid all this and blah, blah, blah. They're not. A lot of them aren't superstars. But, there you go. The average athlete, let's say a League One or League Two player, is not going to have the same amount of money. They're not as well paid. Rugby league and rugby union players, most of them aren't as well paid as you think. They're on very, very humble salaries, and if you think about it in real terms, they're still paid quite well, but they're not paid nearly as well as you think. But anyway, I'm going to leave that there. Really interesting live stream, as always. Really appreciate all the questions, and some of that talk of some of the players. I've got to do a Paolo Di Canio video now, and a Thomas Repka, and a Brolin, and some other a Slaven Bilic video now. What is some career videos? Haven't done them for a while. That will be fun. I think the last player career video I did was Muzzy Is It. That I can think off the top of my head was Muzzy Is It. Great player he was. Absolutely fantastic player. So from me for now, thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate all the discussion we have had. Not so much more the Hangout, more the sports tonight. So, yeah, but I think it's stopped raining now. I think it's still trying. But yeah, from me for now, thank you very, very much for watching. Really appreciate the questions, as always. And I will have some more content for you guys tomorrow, more club histories. We're going to look at some more Swiss clubs tomorrow and a few other clubs across Europe. I think I might look at some Belgian clubs because they're quite interesting. Maybe some Austrian ones. But from me for now, thank you very much. And I'll have obviously some more content for you guys over the rest of the week. So for me for now, it is goodbye.